sheet of music here. Do we have anybody online?
No, because I'm just calling. So.
Okay.
Maybe.
Welcome to Copper Valley Cell Phone.
The administrator has not yet arrived. If
Leif, will this be recorded?
the conference administrator
I'll just mention before we start, I meant to get an email out.
conference.
That, I meant to circulate an email, but I figured some of you probably wouldn't get it before the meeting anyway, so. With that, I'll call the City Council work session of September 4th, 2019 to order at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here?
Tom Baylor is absent. Ken Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard is absent. Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison. Here. And David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, tonight's work session topic is a presentation by UBS, who manages the city's investments. And I will let you introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Buck Adams. I've been working with the city of Cordova since 2009, managing investment assets since then. And I am joined tonight by, she's a rookie in the business. She's only got 36 years of investment management experience. Tammy Head, who I'll speak on further. Tammy and I have been friends for 25 years. I've been in the business. And just as a kind of a funny aside, on October 19th, 1987, the cataclysmic crash of the market, when the Dow Jones was down 22% of its value in one day. Tammy was what we called the duty broker at the time. And that meant you came in at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, because the market's open at 5:30 here. And every ticket, every phone call has to be answered, a manual ticket done. It has to be given to a wire operator, transmitted to New York and stuff. And Tammy was, what, 8.5 months pregnant on that day. And it was, you know, in her experience in the business, kind of a biblical experience. So I came along a few years later into the business after I retired from police work. But Tammy and I have known each other, worked side by side, been dear friends for over a quarter century, almost 30 years. And my purpose here tonight is to just give you a quick 30,000-foot overview of where we stand currently with the city assets. And then, you know, there are times when, I've heard it said before that luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. And something has made itself available, a process has made itself available that Cordova qualifies for with our institutional consulting team. Now, they consult on over $130 billion worth of assets. Tammy herself, within the state of Alaska, consults on, what, 1.6 billion of assets. In the past, because of technology and staffing and everything, the institutional consulting group, as I said, who manages and assists and consults on $130 billion, their account levels and stuff that, you know, it was like you needed to have a ton more money to be able to be within the institutional consulting program. Technology, additional staffing, the firm has ramped that up, and the necessity for being able to bring a particular type of analysis to institutions, and especially to like municipalities and governmental organizations. The oversight and requirements for monitoring investment policy statements and things like that. We, in our current capacity, Chad and I have served as fiduciaries on the investment side. The city has its investment policy statement. we really can't, we manage to that policy, but we can't help with that policy per se, amend that policy. The institutional consultants, the 100 of them that are in the firm around the country, also help by having UBS step in, and if I misspeak, Tammy will backhand me, we know each other that well, but to serve also in a fiduciary capacity alongside of the city, alongside of you in your investment policy statement, and that's a huge deal. All right, so you have to be an institutional consultant. It has to fall within that purview of the firm. What has happened is with the technology additions and things like that, the asset levels have come down and the staffing has come up to the point where they are able to assist a city or a governmental institution or a state the size of Cordova's account. And that's, to me, that's a big deal. That adds a whole additional layer of analysis and oversight and assistance for the city. My job tonight, Tammy will discuss it further, was just to give you a 30,000-foot view, because we're mid-quarter of where we stand, and everybody's been watching the markets. We're at war with China, we're not at war with China. We're at this, we're at that. Nobody knows what's going on. We're up 800 points, we're down 500 points. Who knows what happens? So as it stands, as of now, I'm very pleased to say, currently the city has just over $9.3 million with us. Year-to-date net gain so far of $762,627, which is 8.63%. Withdrawals, only $269,000 so far this year. In the permanent fund, of that 9.3 million, 8.1, almost 8.2 million of it is in the permanent fund. And the permanent fund has gains of 680,392 so far year to date. That's 8.75% return on the permanent fund. And the fact is, it's only about 24% stock, which is to have that return and that small a percentage in stock, we're very happy with that. There's a planned withdrawal of $1.3 million, and that affords us the opportunity to say, okay, if that withdrawal happens, that also allows us to revisit the policy statement and make sure everything's in line. That's part of the reason that Tammy's here tonight. And Central Treasury, essentially a very short-term, I'm not going to use the word cash, but cash-like account, is $1.1 million in it. It's gained $82,000 so far this year, 7.67% return. Haven't taken any withdrawals from it. It has 0 stocks in it. It's 98% bonds and just under 2% cash. So we've still managed to have gains year to date of $82,000 on the bank account, and then gains of $680,000 on the investment account, for a combined total of $762,000. And we're very pleased to be able to bring that to the table. So without further ado, what I would like to do is kind of turn things over to Tammy. She can describe the institutional consulting role, also discuss some of the various plans, or at least mention the plans that the IC, which is what I'll refer to them. Yes.
Oh, I was just waiting for the transition, but would you prefer to take questions kind of at the end or as you go?
If people have any questions on investments and things like that, we can bring them whenever you'd like. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Gleason.
So that Central Treasury, you're talking about the enterprise funds money also?
Yeah, the 1.15 million, we have it classified as Central Treasury. In the past, the accounting of where those funds, what aggregates to Central Treasury has really been a factor of what happens, how the finance director has directed those funds, meaning that it to us is classified as a Central Treasury account. It is short-term investments. We manage it to a very short-term time horizon. In the past, we've seen funds have had to move around, within the city's needs. So when you say the enterprise funds, whether or not that's specific to this account, I wouldn't know.
Okay. I thought we had like 5 million in there, counting the harbor, and no?
No, because I think the concern was with where we withdrew that 1.3 million, that it would kind of wipe out that liquid cash account.
I understood that. I just meant, so we made 82,000 on that $1 million?
Yes, sir.
That's a lot? Okay. I thought the enterprise funds were also in that account, but that would be.
No, it's just on the 1.1 million, and it's been managed with bonds and short duration bonds and things like that. And so, yeah, it was a good year, for fixed income. The bond market has been so disrupted of late that we've been able to actually take advantage of it to find some opportunities and take advantage of those opportunities. So we've been very happy with that. And to only have essentially 22-23% in stocks in a permanent fund and still to be up, 8.75% so far this year, we're pleased with that too, considering all the volatility and everything that's going on. So,
Well, since I interrupted anyway, did somebody join us online, another councilman?
Yeah, hi, this is Tom Baylor.
Okay,
Okay, thanks, Tom.
thank you.
We just started the UBS presentation, and I just had a question on the institutional part. So you mentioned opportunity, a marriage of opportunity. So there's another management layer there, or some more tools there. Is that at an overhead, or?
no, it does not. No, it
Okay.
does not. It will be, if what happens is we would transfer the consulting to Tammy's group.
Okay,
All right, so the consulting goes to her group because they do the work on the investment policy statements, and it's quite the process. I mean, some of the clients, we published here a list of clients that have permitted themselves to be listed as clients. They said, that's fine, you can list us as clients, you all have that. There are clients on there whose names you would certainly recognize, but are not, publicly available for. So if no other questions, I'd like to introduce Tammy Head, my friend and colleague for as long as I've been in the business. Take it
sure.
away, kid.
Oh, the last piece, part of that was if as an institutional, with access to the institutional group, does that, a lot of times like an equity placement has thresholds of like hundreds of millions or something, or preferred stocks and certain investment opportunities require a certain threshold of investing. Does it make any of that accessible to us at all, or just?
Take it away.
So if I may.
You bet.
Please don't
Just go ahead with your
Sure.
presentation.
Great. Thank you, Buck, for the intro. I appreciate that. So again, just talking a little bit about Chad and Buck came to me, and they periodically come to me and say, we've got these kind of clients. Do they qualify yet for the institutional? And as Buck mentioned, through technology, it really has, and it sounds like you've done pretty well in your performance, given those numbers. It gives you that opportunity to offer another arm of UBS and get you into more. What you're going to see is on the institutional side, we do a dual contract with the city of Cordova, saying we're going to act as a fiduciary alongside with the city of Cordova. So it's a dual contract in that we sign off, you sign, that these are the services that we're going to provide. And part of that's going to be the investment policy statement, we do an asset allocation, and I'll just go through the presentation if I may. But on an institutional, of course, you get more oversight, because when you do the policy statement, when we prepare the policy statement, it has to be approved by our institutional back office as well, because we're actually a fiduciary is on this with you. So there's lots of oversight. They also make sure that the investments are in line with the policy statement. So it is like Buck talked about, it's a process. And that's what we offer, is more the process and making sure we look at, there's no conflict of interest. We don't sell you UBS products. We keep an arm's length approach. So we're always doing what's right for the city of Cordova, and we're not making additional monies on different investments that we sell you. it is what we say it is, and that's the most that we're going to make when you go into this contract. So if you'd like me to, I can go ahead and start the presentation, unless you have any questions before we get started. Okay?
Is there any questions online? Okay, please.
Okay, thank you. So if I could take you to the presentation, there's like 23 pages, and it's just a overview of what the institutional does. In this outline, we're going to talk a little bit about, you already know UBS, but what does the consulting team, what does it look like? What is the experience? What is the process that we can bring to the table to add that additional benefit to the city of Cordova? So we're going to talk about the investment process. We're going to talk about a sample timeline, things like that. So if you go to page 3, as Buck mentioned, there's over 100 institutional consultants with, as of December 2018, over 130 billion in assets, just the consulting side. We have 54 research analysts, 16 institutional program managers, and it goes on and on. So a very deep list of qualified people to have oversight of the process and the manager, the whole due diligence that we go through for each manager that's selected as part of your lineup, money managers. So if you go to page 4, we put this as, this is your team in Anchorage. So of course, the consultant being myself, and then Buck, Chad, and Megan. I think you guys have worked with Megan for several years. Okay. She would still be a part of this team. So wanted to make sure you got to see some of the bio there. As Buck mentioned, I've been in the industry for 36 years. Very few places I haven't been in Alaska. So I work with a lot of the regional corporations, lots of village corporations, hospitals. So I've been around quite a few of those type of clients. If you go to page 5, in the institutional side, we just help institutions like, you know, we mentioned the corporations, municipalities, Taft-Hartley type clients, foundations, endowments. I do a lot of 401ks for corporations, different companies, faith-based organizations, and other entities. So we take you through a guided and prudent process that how we help you to organize through that fiduciary role. And we start with, if I may, well, I'll give you a little bit more background here. So if you go to page 7 to 23, you know about UBS, and just to kind of reiterate, we have about 1.2 trillion in UBS wealth management that we manage. That's including the institutional side. That's all of UBS on the Americas side. It's obviously a very global company, but just speaking on the Americas side, we were nominated Best Global Wealth Manager in 2019. If you go to Europe, or you see UBS everywhere. You see UBS more on the East Coast. I know in Alaska, it's been kind of one of those where some people know UBS and some don't. We've made a pretty big presence. We used to manage some of the pool of money with the Alaska Permanent Fund. So on an institutional basis, they're pretty well known. On a retail, maybe not. Some people are familiar with it. We kind of joke, our building in Anchorage, you can from an airplane see the UBS letters. They're huge. So I think there's like this little rivalry between these different financial firms. How big can you make our letters on our building? But UBS we're located on the corner of A Street and Benson, and we're in that 4-story brick building right there, right across from Walmart. So again, in order to be an institutional consultant, you have to have your CIMA, which is a Certified Investment Management Analyst title. We have a long tenure with most of the consultants, over 35 years. We follow a lot of best practices. So when we go through, you go to page 8, again, here's some of the, we do a broad presence over many type of institutions, and we're just reiterating We deal with corporations in the public and private retirement plans. We do a lot of that in the state of Alaska, so a lot. Pension defined benefit plans, general operating reserve, so many different entities under these headlines, and not-for-profits. We do several foundations. So lots of different objectives, lots of different needs, but they follow the same process, the policy statement. We do an asset allocation. We do we sit down with you and develop determining what is your risk versus return objectives. And then we match that portfolio and we monitor. So it's a whole process, and we stay on top of that every quarter. So sometimes managers that we hire, they, for whatever reason, if they're not performing in their peer group ranking of the 3 and 5 year, they're not in their top 50 quartile, and they don't match the 3 and 5 year benchmark, they're not beating that benchmark of their relative benchmark, we put them on a watch list. And so there's a whole process involved that if sometimes we come to you and we say, okay, Vanguard, for whatever reason, isn't performing in their 3 and 5, and we have reason to believe that we should go out and do a manager search. We bring that to you. We screen down all these different managers of each style, bring you 3, and say, here's the best 3 that we have from our screen. And then we sit down and we go through the different types of managers, and then you ultimately make the decision as to which manager you want to add back into your lineup. So it's an ongoing, continual process. So if you go to page 9, again, this talks about what the steps are. So we go through this, first thing is we go through a discovery. We look at, we review your portfolio. We go back to you and we look at the risk profile. We look at what your investment objectives are. Do you need income? Do you, is there anything unique to this portfolio? Is it something that when you, like your permanent fund, do you put it in there and you don't draw from it? You look out for 10 years or perpetuity. We look at all these different factors. Or do you pay out gains or income? We put that all in the policy statement. Those are things that we discover in the process, in the discovery process. And that goes to your step 2, where we develop the investment policy and make sure it's in line with the objectives. And I hear about a central treasury where it may have different objectives than your permanent fund. We would have a policy statement specific to that central treasury as to what are allowable type securities and what is the amount that you could be in fixed income. Is it 100%? Learning all those things about central treasury. And then we go to the asset allocation study. Where we do in the asset allocation study is all the major firms have what we call a capital markets assumptions, where we look at the different asset classes that are out there, whether it be U.S. fixed income, U.S. equity, what cash is looking to do, private equity, anything out there. We look at what our best intel from UBS says, here's what we think each one of these asset classes are going to do, what we believe, and it's what their research tells them. And they put out this capital markets assumptions, what they think for the next 7 to 10 years. Based on that capital markets assumptions, that's how we put that into the asset allocation study. And that study is what we forecast out for the next 7 to 10 years. And we look to find what is the right mix that makes sense for the amount of risk that you want to take versus the amount of return. So in that allocation study, it takes those parameters that come from the capital markets assumptions. So UBS in the past hasn't made those changes, but every few years, now they're starting to make changes to the capital markets assumptions every year. As the economy changes, these are all what we call strategic portfolios, where they're looking out long-term. They're not looking at tactical plays and tactical allocations. And tactical allocations mean that if in the next 6 months we think gold's going to do really well, we're going to have a piece of the allocation into gold. That's not what the institutional does. They're on a strategic asset allocation basis. Does that make sense? So they're not going to try to They don't adjust the portfolio to tactical moves. They look at strategic, what is our long-term goals? What are the needs of this pool of assets? We want, for example, we have a target of 5%. Given the amount of risk that we want to take, we are comfortable with that, and it tells us how much is represented in each one of those categories to do that 5% target. Once a year, we come back and we revisit that asset allocation, make sure it's in line with what, if anything's changed, your objectives have changed, maybe you need to draw more income, we may make adjustments to that asset allocation at that time. So it's a review of your policy statement every year. We do it every year. Just even if there's no change, let's talk about it, everything in line, and we make that check mark. If there's a change, then we come back and we redline that investment policy for recommended changes, and then you come back and you approve it, and then we give you a clean copy, and now you have an amended policy that's current. And we adjust that investment policy to that asset allocation that you agree on, which are comfortable from the city of Cordova. So it's this going through the policy statement, the asset allocation, and then building the portfolio. We do quarterly reports. They come out to you every quarter. Even if you don't have a meeting, we're going to send them to you quarterly. If you want them more often, we can do what Buck has showed in a PMR. We call it a PMR, a portfolio management report. But the quarterly report that you come from the institutional is a more detailed report. We go back and we pull from all the different managers, we reconcile that, and that's how we give you your quarterly. These quarterlies can be kind of big. So if you have a meeting, I usually prepare an executive summary where we pull some of these pages and not make them so long and get to the meat of what it is in that report, but you're always delivered the full report so you know exactly what's happened in that portfolio for the quarter. And then as far as if there's a distribution, if you have a request for funds, what we do is we go out and we prepare what we call a rebalance, where we take all the securities, we give them their market value, we stay within your target allocation, and we show you where it would come from, and we send it to you, you approve it, we come back and we make the changes, and that's how we do off a rebalance. So everything is very well thought through on, there's definitely a process that we're always accountable for how we do each step. And then the monitoring is going to be that, what I was talking about, if a manager, when we're looking at their peer group rankings and they're falling below their peer group and they're consistent at that, then we come back and we say, maybe it's time to look at a new manager, and we go out and we do a manager search for that space. For example, if you had a large cap manager and it's not performing in the peer group ranking, but it's beating its benchmark, we wouldn't consider that on a watch list. But if it's not performing on its benchmark in a 3 and a 5 year, and it's not ranking in the top 50 percentile of its peer group ranking, we would put them on a watch, and we would watch them and decide, you know, is it just a bad 1 year performance that's throwing them off on their 3 and 5 year? We will look at all the due diligence behind as to maybe we would come back and say, okay, I think we recommend that you do a manager search, and we would go through that whole process to find a new manager. Sometimes we've had cases where we've had a great performance in a manager, but if the portfolio manager left the company for whatever reason, it may impact the way that the portfolio is being run, and it might have great performance, but we may come back and say, given what we know, they've changed, we have a new portfolio manager, we don't think it's in your best interest to keep this fund, we'd like to do a manager search and look and see if there's a better alternative. So there's that kind of rapport back and forth on the institutional side.
So, take a couple questions.
Sure, sorry, I've talked quite a bit here.
Questions, council? Okay. Councilman Baylor or Ellison online? I guess,
Wait at the end.
sorry, go ahead online.
I think he said he was going to wait till the end.
Okay, great. Councilman Schaefer.
So it's a more active management process than what we're currently doing, or?
It's not more active, it's just a different process. Is what you're getting in the institutional side is more that the policy statement, that process of how we determine what's, you know, when a manager falls out. I know Chad and Buck have worked really hard, and they do all the analysis on their own. This is going to take it to the institutional side, and they will start doing some of that process. But we're tying in the policy statement and the asset allocation, and that's what's a little bit more different than what we're currently.
And they're sitting to, the city really didn't have an investment policy statement when we came on board. Everything was in the Alaska Municipal League pool. It was in money market interest, earning like 0.1% at the time. And so we helped back then with the
Microphone, please.
Microphone, sorry.
We helped back then with the development, the city developing a policy statement, working with the city attorney and everything like that. And so that policy statement was implemented by the city, adopted and passed by the city, and we've managed to that policy statement all these years. So that what really happens in this case is that we were fiduciaries to manage the money to the policy statement. The city owned the policy statement, okay? What institutional consulting can do and if she knows me well enough, I'll get back at it, but what IC is able to do is actually help sit on your side of the table also with responsibility for the policy statement. So in other words, it affords council and the city a measure of protection of having UBS standing there with you in regards to the policy statement itself. And in addition, then they manage to that policy statement. Does that make sense? So you have the firm standing there with you in regards to the policy statement in and of itself. So we don't have 54 analysts, that in Chad and I's office, and we were happy with what we've done. But this opportunity came up, and the conversation with Tammy was like, you know what? If the size of the accounts have come down due to technology and adding staff, where we can make this an IC account and give the city that additional layer of oversight and protection, why wouldn't we do that? Because it's our responsibility to make sure that the accounts are managed in your best interest with the best technology and intellectual capital available to us. We said, okay, let's see if we can bring this over on the IC side. Just made sense for the city.
I just had a couple of questions, if council doesn't mind. So I'm not sure. So do you kind of work with an institutional group here in Alaska, or do you kind of have it and then have an extended group outside? My real question is, especially if you have some municipal accounts and whatnot, I'm thinking about governance and management of the portfolio. So a quarterly report, and this is part question of kind of how you have it structured with others. Do those quarterly reports kind of go to like a city manager, a strong mayor, and then council actually kind of looks at the annual policy review? And I'm just thinking of the workload and whatnot, and sometimes those can be like a one-page, just a balancing that's fairly straightforward, or...
So they do come out quarterly. Where they go, they can, I don't know if the process is, they usually come to you, Susan?
I think, well, it's been different. The finance director occasionally, sometimes it's straight to the city manager.
Okay.
And then obviously I get quarterly reports to put into the packet. You're asking about how much work it's going to be, or how much has to get done at the council table versus staff? Is that
Exactly.
kind of where you're going?
And so also kind of, I'm more concerned, actually the reporting is kind of an internal thing. That's on the city side. If council wants to see those quarterly reports, then it's easy to publish those. I'm thinking more about who actually makes the decisions on how it's allocated and everything, because I think, so yeah.
So in the beginning, there's more work, right? Because we're going to be looking at the portfolio, determining your risk return. So there is more work. Ultimately, whoever is authorized for the city of Cordova would be making the decision on the allocation, because it's a combination. Everybody that has a role, that has authority, should be involved in the asset allocation. Once it's up and running, then those quarterly reports, you decide where, how often you want to look at them, but we have to provide them to you at least quarterly.
And I think we're there. I think council's kind of waiting until fishing season and stuff gets done and looking at doing exactly that, kind of looking at how our portfolios balance, what the risk tolerance and, earnings expectations are and so forth. And then, this is just for, I guess, my own question. So if I'm understanding, so if part of the portfolio, for example, is invested in, say, Vanguard funds,
Yes.
you will have a manager of that Vanguard fund that you kind of work with, and they kind of actually manage what they have in that fund and how and everything. Then you just kind of watch that as if you're on our side of the table as a fiduciary and saying, wow, our Vanguard piece is outperforming, or it's underperforming, or maybe they have a new manager and the performance hasn't really changed, but that manager's culture is different than our portfolios, our management statement. He's kind of a high-risk guy, but we have him in a low-risk policy, and maybe that's not the best fit. Is that how I was kind of hearing that? Or
So that's a really good point. So when we look at the manager, every quarter, you're going to see what their performance is on a 3- and 5-year basis against their peer group, their benchmark relative to that particular manager. And so we are going to be on the same side in that if that manager isn't performing, then we could have a manager that's on there for a year, 2 years on the watch list. But what we're doing is we're identifying, look, there's some underperformance. They're kind of one of these managers that has a year and they're really strong, or they protect you more on the downside. But you're always going to know where that manager compares to other managers in that same asset class, whether if you have some passive managers or index funds, we will have some active managers trying to beat the benchmark. So it's really your preference. It's an open architecture. But what you get from us is really, looking at those managers and having a criteria that's best practices that looks at the 3- and 5-year. We always give you current quarter, year to date, trailing 1 year, trailing 3-year, 5-year, and you're always going to see exactly how they compare to their benchmark. The other thing we do is make sure that the benchmark is appropriate for that manager. Sometimes a manager starts off as a large cap manager, and pretty soon they're starting to buy more companies in the mid-size category, mid-size companies, and they become no longer a large cap manager, and the benchmark's not the right appropriate benchmark. That happens often. We're constantly, seems like we're updating the right benchmark to the manager. That's what we're doing on a regular basis. We're looking at all those dynamics. And we're looking at all the process behind the manager. Like you said, the only time that we really get involved as far as if the performance is there, the peer group ranking is there, is if there's a change that could impact the way that they manage that pool that is different than what they were in the prospectus, or there's a change, then we would come back and say, we have a institutional department that is very deep, that does due diligence, and they'll say, okay, this manager is now on watch, or we need to remove this manager for these reasons. So you're getting that constant, but maybe what they're doing in the portfolio is a little different, but maybe it's not impacting how they manage that pool. We wouldn't necessarily come back to you and make any change off that. Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, council? Okay. Chew up all your time.
So if I can take you to page 11, maybe are we running out of time? Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay. So on page 11, this really is the visual slide of what we do. So we start with that universe, and then we go through what we call that capital markets assumptions, what we think each asset class is going to do for the next 7 to 10 years. And then we make this combination of what is the right mix between all these asset classes to get to the return and the risk that you're willing, that you feel comfortable with. That's where we create that construction of a portfolio. And then you make the decision, is this how we want to implement this? Is this the managers that we want? And we move forward with that. Any questions on that page? Okay. And again, just kind of going back on page 14, this is just kind of a recap. We look at that performance evaluation. We do the executive performance summary. Like I said, we give you that full quarterly report, and it's every detail of one of the managers in each asset class. And sometimes they can be 50, 100 pages. So they give you every single detail. And then if you're having a meeting, we create that executive summary and pull pages from that. But we have to always deliver the full report to you, so you know exactly all the detail. But the executive summary is just a shorter version of that. And then we look at, again, the indices, the peer groups. We talked about that. We show it on a time, you're pretty much used to seeing on the time-weighted returns. I don't think there's much more there. The risk return analysis, these are pretty standard that you see now. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, there is a timeline on page 18, and I just want to caution you on this because this is really dependent on you guys. So we can act as quickly as you want. If you decided that you wanted to go forward with the institutional side, there would be a contract that we would produce. We would come back to you that would require your signature as well as ours. So you would execute that agreement. Then we would go back and we would sit with you and determine what those goals and risk and get to know a little bit more about where your comfort is as far as risk and return. And then we would start working on the policy statement. So when it says week 1, week 2, that's pretty aggressive. And so I don't know how quickly, like you said, you have fishing season. This is not something this could take several months if you want. It's really up to you. Once the agreement is signed, the contract between both of us, then we start our job. Then we start really compiling, looking at, preparing the asset allocation study and really starting to take a deeper dive as to, get us started in that direction and get your portfolio construction on its way. Once you're done with that, then it's pretty easy. Then the monitoring, then you kind of get used to the format, the coming in and here's why we are looking at this manager, and we're always going to show you exactly where you stand on that 3 and 5 year. And again, that's the industry standard. And these peer group rankings is how do we compare the money manager to every other manager, for example, in the large cap space? How do they compare in a peer group ranking? We want them in the 50 percentile, greater than the 50 percentile ranking. So we want them pretty high up there. And then we also want to see that they can beat their benchmark in the 3 and 5 year if they're an active manager. If they're an index, then the benchmark information is they're not out to try to outperform their benchmark. They're representing the benchmark, but is the fees in line with that index? And sometimes we do trade out index funds as well.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you guys have like a historical report on, so we're changing from one management strategy to another one, an increase in returns, like a...
We don't, because every client is different. If everybody was the same allocation, then you could come up with that return. But every one of the clients is a little different. So they're customized to everybody's needs. So, for example, I have an association and they have a spending policy. So they take out 5% every year. They have different needs. So their returns are going to be a little bit more focused on investments maybe that generate income to help offset that 5% requirement. So they're all different. It's not like you're buying a money manager and this is our performance. We're actually the consultant on the portfolio, so everybody's a little different. Go ahead.
I think one of the, Tammy might come in and make this presentation to a hospital, not-for-profit organization that either has their money elsewhere, with another firm, has somebody in-house. You'd be amazed how often you see that. Somebody just that's somewhere in-house and staff just making decisions, well, we're going to buy this, we're going to buy that. So the process sounds, complex, and it is sophisticated. The advantage we have is you're already with our firm, you're already with UBS. Okay, so that's not having to unravel a bunch of things from other locations and other firms. You're already here, and for us, the ability to put that additional layer of protection on your side of the table, which I think is important and should be important to everybody here, is crucial. The time it takes to get it done, yes, initially it's a little, it seems intense. We understand that, but you already have an investment policy statement. What we're talking about is re-examining, making sure it fits, making sure that all the boxes are checked for you. And in this particular case, it's not as big, in my estimation, it's not as big a disruption as if you were having to, okay, we're going to fire XYZ investment management firm, and we got money over here, we're going to fire them, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That part is already taken care of. The assets are right here. They're already with UBS. What we're going to do is put another overlay of risk management and monitoring on top of it. And that works to your advantage because it affords the city another fiduciary standing with you, right? So I think, from my perspective, if I didn't think it was a good idea and I didn't think that it served the city, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't have being this discussion, because Chad and I, we look at what we've done for the city and we're very pleased. We're very happy. We're proud. We're proud of what we've done. And in this case, with the ability now to bring this additional sophistication of 54 analysts and strategists who are also looking not just at your portfolio, but all the managers that feed into this system, that at the end of the day, they come out and say, you know what, here's the best in this class, and the best in this class, and the best in this class. And we like to bring that to our clients. And in this case, you would benefit from that. So I know it seems intense. I know it seems kind of like, I think we're happy with what we're doing right now. Why would we want to do this? It's worth the journey.
Get some questions in?
Sure.
Councilman Baylor.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's only a few minutes left.
Yeah.
I'll wait my turn and I'll start.
No, go ahead, Councilman Baylor.
Okay, so thanks for being here, and that was some helpful information, definitely some things I think we need to look at and discuss as a group. I got a few questions and statements here. Before I start, in no way I'm going to suggest how you should invest or why you should invest or what you should invest in. I've just got questions, so I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. The other thing I want to get out in the open is, I've been asking questions and I've been wanting to get an average. Because for me, the return you got this year is great, but I kind of look at the long term. And I was kind of looking back at our 10-year average, and what I could figure out in the papers that I got, it was like a 3.25% average, which I don't really consider all that great, but I don't know what our policy statement says, so maybe there's some restrictions. That's something we need to look at. The other thing that kind of put red flags up for me is when I was asking these questions, the manager mentioned to me, as I was just talking to him one-on-one, he said, well, we're not their biggest account. And I hope that sets you back in your chair as much as it did me, because I don't believe you feel that way. We're just a small account. We don't need your attention by the presentation you gave today. But when you hear that, it kind of gives you some it raises red flags for me. What I like to see, and maybe it's there, but it's hard for me to find, or I'm not looking in the right places. But like when I pull up my own accounts, I can go right online. I can find out what my holdings are, what the current value is, what the cost basis is, what the realized gains and loss are, what the performance is, and I can go back 10 years. Now, I'm not suggesting that council people should be able to do that, but I am suggesting that somebody, whether it's the CFO or the city manager, should be able to do that. If we've got a question or how things are going, we should be able to get that answer for us, and we haven't been able to get those answers as of late. So that's, I don't know, maybe you feel you're providing that, but it's not coming through clear to me. And, and I look at, when you say you're only at 22 to 23% in stock, I sit here thinking, well, why so low? Again, you're the expert. The policy statement may dictate some of that. And, as an individual investor, as you know, you invest differently in your 20s and 30s than you do in your 40s and 50s and your 60s and 70s. I don't know how you look at an institutional like the City of Cordova, because we're looking out 50 years, I would assume. So those are kind of my questions and concerns.
Okay, may I respond?
Yes.
In the past, under the prior city managers, the finance directors can log in and look at the accounts. You can get online access to everything. So it's not like once a quarter the information comes out. The information is out there available, just like you said, Councilman Baylor. You could log in and look at your own accounts. Why couldn't we log in and look at the city's accounts? Well, there are designated individuals within any organization who have online access and passwords and things like that, and they can look at those accounts. Where they are, who they are in the past, we've the finance director, the city manager, under prior administrations has been able to look at that. And when you do go back 10 years, remember the city was all in cash. And when we took over the accounts, we weren't allowed to have stocks initially. It was all bonds. And it took literally years to be able to get councils at the time and get the administration to begin to allow us to really allocate out to a portfolio like you see today. So it wasn't one of those things like we turned the switch in late 2009 and suddenly everything went on the books, as it were, allocated as it is now. It was a long, complex, drawn-out process, kind of having to educate and have council begin to work with us on how to get those accounts up and running and allocated. And I'm not sure if I said something, I couldn't hear what you said, Councilman, but I'm not sure I said, there was something about a small account and red flag. I couldn't understand what it was. I couldn't understand. Yes, Councilman Glass.
Gleason, so he was referring to our current city manager, not you.
Oh,
That didn't,
okay.
he wasn't pointing a finger at you.
I was like, what? Okay.
I think he just heard a statement like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Baylor, we're not your biggest account, as if maybe we're not being managed the same because the city isn't a very big account for you, so we're just not getting as much attention.
Oh, no, you.
But again, not your statement. But
No, our statement, we have worked a tremendous number of hours. We always do on your accounts. This just was an opportunity that presents itself to be able to say, okay, can we do more? That's it.
So, can I say one more?
yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I think maybe there's something lost in translation between you and, whoever we have, the CFO or city manager to council, and so maybe as we get settled in with new people coming in, we can work them with you to make sure that they know how understand how to get us the information. Maybe that's a weak point in this chain. They're awfully busy, so maybe they're not up to speed on some of this, but I appreciate your presentation.
Yes, please.
Council Baylor, this is Tammy. Maybe I might add to another comment that you made on the amount allocated to equities. So if you go to the institutional side, you will absolutely have input as a council member. You're authorized, everybody will come up with a allocation that everybody's comfortable with. So it's not going to be one or two, it's going to be whoever are the authorities that's going to make that decision, but it's a group effort. So that might help with how much is allocated to equities today and how much might be in the future based on our time spent together looking at an allocation. And look at the institutional as that you've graduated. You've graduated up to the next level. And it doesn't get any better than this. You get the same treatment as the city of Cordova that some of our billion-dollar clients do. You get the same treatment, same attention that you will as a city, that you would a $100 million account.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Is there other questions, Council? Councilman Schaefer.
So what's the difference in the structure between our current management strategy and this new institutional one, potentially?
Good question. The fees. Yeah. So I think right now, if I understand it correctly, I think in your permanent fund, you're being charged 75 basis points. Under the institutional, it would be 60. So it's a little bit less. And so obviously there'll be break points as that account grows. Then there'll be opportunity for it to be a graduated. It will come down as you hit the next break points.
Other questions, Council?
Question.
So with 1 minute left, actually, so just kind of reading between the lines, does it sound like maybe a lot of manual processes now have access, the city has access basically to data analytics, a lot of deeper analysis that maybe isn't as labor intensive, it's a lot richer type of analysis to help meet our goals, and maybe that's why it's a little less costly, but there's good tools there.
Yeah, so on the institutional, it's like shopping at Costco versus your local. Because of the volume, you get a cheaper break. So you have access to also on the institutional side, managers that you may not have access necessarily to on the retail side.
And then I think Buck kind of just backed into the question that I was really kind of circling around earlier, is that you have 7 different councilmen and a mayor and a city manager and finance director that all have different levels of financial, experience and education and so forth. And it's been 10 years to kind of get to where we're at now with our portfolio management. So I'm anticipating that 8-week conversation could be like an 8-year conversation or an 8-month conversation. But do you have some tools to kind of help facilitate that discussion and so forth? Like I was just trying to think of an example, like questionnaires or things that can help council kind of have those discussions and draw out what an investment strategy might look like, or some sample portfolios and risk tolerances and stuff.
So what we would normally do is take a look at your existing lineup that you have, and we would look at and say, okay, in this current allocation, this is the target return, this is the amount of risk, and we would show some different portfolios side by side that say, if you dialed it up, dialed it down, what would it look like? And you're gonna get a lot from just that. So those are demonstrations on a visual and quantitative side, so you'll get to see the numbers and you get to know real quick what you're comfortable with. If you have a portfolio and it's, for example, 10 million and you're down 2 million, are you uncomfortable with that? We're gonna know right away where that should be. You're also gonna have probably some language that I think on the Central Treasury, if I'm correct, that you have a 515 section that you follow that says what, that it has to be fixed income and what quality that is, that kind of helps dictate what that portfolio might look like. If you're flexible on that, those are the things that we need to kind of discuss and see where you are, how much risk that you can take. But starting that process, it's not so much a questionnaire as it is seeing where you currently are versus where we think that portfolio and what other ones could look like side by side, where your comfort is.
Okay, great.
It's going pretty quick.
Thank you. And then just because I know the flight schedule's here, would you be available if council has any questions or anything like between now and like noon tomorrow or something? Or
Yes.
okay, maybe if you could just leave a card with Susan or something,
Absolutely.
and they could get a hold of the city clerk if they have any follow-up questions. So thank you very much for your presentation and for this service offering.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
So adjournment, council?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, the work session is adjourned. We'll just take 60 seconds before we start the 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here?
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Ken Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard is absent, Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
and David Gleason
Is here. He's
is
here.
here. He's just,
Did you hear me?
yes, I heard you. Who?
Okay.
David Allison, yes.
We gotcha. Thank you.
There's a quorum.
Okay, today's public hearing is for substitute ordinance 1176, and this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the transfer of $1,300,000 from the General Reserve Fund, Permanent Fund, for the purpose of bringing current PERS obligations for Cordova Community Medical Center Authority, and authorizing amendment to the City of Cordova approved 2019 budget. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this ordinance in the public? Okay, I see none. And since we're past the scheduled time for the public hearing, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing's adjourned. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor, Ken Jones,
Present.
Jeff Guard, did you make it? Jeff is absent. Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
and David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, approval of the regular agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, and what's,
No, she doesn't have to do that yet,
okay,
but,
Be in the agenda item, or in the,
sorry, we do not need the executive session
okay.
on
okay.
an update from the attorney. So you can just remove it.
Okay, so we just, clerk suggests removing the executive session because we don't need one or not prepared for one this time. Any other amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the the agenda is approved with the exclusion of the executive session. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to declare? Councilman Schaefer.
I'd just like to state for the record that for agenda item 17, I work for the Science Center, but I don't think it should be a conflict of interest because I won't gain financially from the lease with the city, but I just wanted to make it known. You guys can decide.
Okay, council, I don't see a direct financial gain or conflict, but council can decide that if they feel there is a conflict. So,
Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I don't think it's a conflict either, but I did consult with another contractor on the pool roof and wall, but I wasn't going to receive any money, and I don't think it's a conflict.
Okay, so, I don't think they're up for any kind of quasi judicial, so there's no ex parte communication involved there.
Which item is he talking about?
Swim pool?
The roof and wall
Okay,
repairs
he was
for
a
Bob
competing
Clark
bid
building.
on that
Yeah.
item.
But so he did
Part of it.
consult with them, but it wasn't for a fee basis. Is that what I understood, Councilman Baylor?
Correct. I did not bid on it.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any other conflicts to declare? Okay, so we have no conflicts on this agenda. Thank you, council. Communications by and petitions from visitors. We have no guest speakers scheduled for this afternoon. Is there any audience comments on agenda items on this evening's agenda? Okay, seeing none. I will mention, Councilman Baylor online, you may have dialed in just a second after I mentioned this earlier, but Manager Lanning was out today. He was stove up and he didn't make it to the meeting tonight. And so Sam Greenwood is here as acting manager. And I just thought I'd mention that. I just threw her under the bus. So I think there's just some specific items she'd like to talk to, but I just want to mention that. So chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions, CCMCA board. Did you have a report, Randall? No. Okay. And I don't see a school board rep here. So, and we don't have our student council representative in attendance yet.
Sorry, I thought it was coming.
So, approval of the consent calendar. Councilman Baylor.
I'm sorry. This is my representative there, and I would ask maybe Dave Gleason to fill you in on this, be easier for him, but we are having the fall meeting here. And Dave, would you mind briefing everybody?
On PISWAC, he's asking.
It's a PISWAC, so just a reminder for council, Tom Baylor is council's representative to PISWAC. So, can you use your mic, please?
I'm referring to the board meeting here.
I think there's a board meeting.
Exactly,
coming up, and
there's a board meeting coming up that Councilman Gleason is going to speak to.
I was?
You are now. I think just the PISWAC board meeting is scheduled for Cordova now, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's on the calendar,
We're
October
going to try to make
10th.
them all here if
Yeah.
we can.
Well, thank you on behalf of council.
I'm going to have to get rough with them.
I think it's good that merchants and bars and motels and restaurants kind of know that kind of like late in the season, and just so they kind of have it on the radar that there will be a group of people in town that will need services.
Yeah, absolutely. So for public consumption, we are going to have the PISWAC fall board meeting here. And I know there's been a lot of consideration for holding those in Anchorage, and it does have an positive economic impact on Cordova when we have them here. So I just appreciate PISWAC holding their meetings here. Thank you, Councilman Baylor. So on the approval of the consent calendar, we have 3 items there. Resolution approving the final plat for the RDG warehouse, a resolution for city council approving the site plan from Dave Rome, from Dave Rome for commercial outside storage, and a recorded excused absences for Councilman Jones and Guard. Does council want to remove any of those from the consent calendar? Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I would like to take the first 2 and vote on those separately, if that would be possible.
Okay, so items 5 and 6 can move to the ordinance and resolutions. I'll just move number 5 to number 21, number 6 to number 22. Any others, council? Okay, that leaves item 7 on the consent calendar. Roll call vote, please.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Guard is absent. David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
and Tom Baylor.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay. Approval of the minutes of August 21st and 28th, regular meeting on the 21st and the public hearing on the 28th.
I move to approve. Second.
Have a motion, a second. Is there any deletions, additions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved as submitted. Consideration of bids. We have a direction to the manager to negotiate a contract with Wolverine Supply for wall replacement and roof repair of the city pool building. It's RFP number PR 19-03.
I move to approve resolution 09-19-37. Is that right?
No, we're on number
one.
10,
Oh.
so on page 20,
27, under Roman numeral 2, there's a recommended motion there.
I went to page 10. So number 10.
Page 27, sorry.
There it is. I move to direct the city manager to negotiate a contract with Wolverine Supply to provide materials and perform all work as described in RFP PR 19-03, replacement of exterior back wall, 14 by 40, and roof repairs, city pool building for a sum not to exceed $97,000.00.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you like to discuss the motion, Councilman Schaefer?
If this was the proposal that came back, the best one to do the job and at a cheaper price, you gotta fix the wall, so.
Okay. Councilman Jones?
Yeah, if this needs to be done, it needs to be done. I guess I'm not sure who decides which RFP to bring to us to vote on. I wish we could,
Public Works Director might be able to help with that.
yeah.
So per city code, which is what this memo comes, sorry.
Sorry, microphone, yeah.
Okay, so per city code, the way that RFPs and ITBs come to city council, they come as one recommended. The code is what, who, how much, and time frame. And that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So the RFPs aren't discussed at city council level per code. So there's a committee that reviews. So RFPs, you have criteria that you score with. ITBs, invitation to bids, are straight up. You probably know it though, just straight up, give me money. Cheapest one goes. RFPs have bids, or sorry,
proposals.
proposals have criteria, and you grade it, and then there's usually at least 2 to 5 people on the committee. So that's what we did with this one.
Okay.
Okay. Good question, Councilman Jones. Other questions or discussion, council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Allison.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, Sam still there, what was the price difference from the other bidder? Percentage, 10%, 20%?
Then, yeah, it was over 10. I mean, well over 10%.
Okay, that's one of the criteria we look at, correct, is because we give a local preference?
They did not meet the local preference. Yes, we looked at that.
Okay. Okay.
And we do have a local preference policy. Or-
Is it 5%?
There's a section in code. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Sam, first of all, I apologize. I probably could have got this to you earlier. I had a question, but it kind of came to me today looking over the paperwork. Just you've got it in there, but on the project, so the 2 doors, one's going to be replaced and a new one put in. you know, as I think back on it, when I looked at it, I did not see any requirement for a lighted exit sign. I don't know if that's something that they're going to ding you on or have you put in, or maybe you have it in there or not. But I just thought I'd get your attention and make sure you check on that before you get the process started.
I will do that. It's per IBC code, so it should be, included, but I will certainly make sure.
Okay, I don't remember seeing it, but maybe it was there.
It was not in the RFP.
I'll remind you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Baylor. Is there any additional discussion?
So I guess the
So
only
that's
thing I
something
want to
that-
make sure is that, the money part is after this, just so we're all clear on that.
There's a negotiated process. So the
Well,
money,
I mean-
oh, yeah, I'm sorry, there's a second action item to allocate the funding for it.
Correct.
Yes, later on the agenda.
Yes.
Right, thank you. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do you want,
Opposed?
Do we need to,
do you want me to do a roll call? If it's not going to be 6-0, I guess I should do a roll call.
Okay, yes, I prefer that.
So on the approval of the motion to direct the manager to negotiate the contract, David Gleason,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
yes?
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yeah.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. Sorry.
I think
thought it
I was hearing what you were hearing, so. I think-
Okay.
Okay, thank you, council.
Better.
So reports of officers, I don't remember doing a written report. I don't think there's one in there. So I've been working on several items the last couple of weeks. Fisheries, ferry, and ferry. So I'll just say, council, I've been able to have some dialogue on the ferry, and I don't know how where that outcome is going to be, but right now, what we're faced with is no service for 7 months. We may get a little bit of motion. We may get more. I've been told that the final scheduling process isn't complete and something may change between now and September 12th. I can tell you I've already been contacted by multiple media. Some are planning on writing the last run of the ferry, and it's going to be, statewide news. I'm going to be tapped for making some statements, and I just like to run something like this by council because the posture, the relationship with the administration is important, but there's several ways this could land. Either we get an accommodation from the administration and maybe the staff or unions may not bite off on it, or vice versa. But my intention is just to basically restate the facts to the media. And if we end up without service, express our disappointment, frustration, and the effort we've put into to come up with workable alternatives, and the public testimony that it's made it clear by this community that we're economically dependent and tied to the ferry. And, I may make, my intention would be to give credit where credit's due. So if somebody comes through with good service and it's a collaboration between the state and the unions and we get some better service, I think they deserve positive credit for that. If we get the abysmal service that appears to be headed our way, I think they get the credit for that. So unless there's any disagreement, I just want to basically shine a light on us getting, poor service if that's where it lands, and frankly, give the administration and whoever else is responsible for not providing that service to us.
Maybe mention the 45,000 signatures on the recall petition.
I'm not going to use the word petition, but I think it's about leadership and providing service to the citizens. And if we're not getting service, then maybe we need to get that from a different administration or some other means. So, okay. Is there any comments online, Councilman Baylor or Allison? Councilman Jones?
Yeah, just, I guess one thing I would hope that you mention would be the fact that our representative fought hard for us and was line item vetoed on the $5 million
Yeah.
funding.
I think for the record, it is important to recognize that in hundreds of millions of dollars of cuts made by the House of Representatives, that our representative got a $5 million supplemental approved by the legislature to the Marine Highway System, largely for Southwest and South Central service gaps through the winter, I should say service suspensions through the entire winter. And that was approved by the legislature and was vetoed by the governor. So that's why we are right now staring at a 7-month gap in service of our highway. And I would just point out that the Marine Highway has never been closed for fires.
You're going to write that?
That's basically all I had to report. That's pretty much where I spent my time, except we have had some positive discussions with Fish and Game on some Fisheries Development Committee commissioners' permit proposals, and we may see some new opportunities in Prince William Sound. So I'm kind of excited about that. And the Fisheries Development Committee is going to be meeting soon to discuss those. We've been advertising those, and those are public meetings. So that's all, unless there's any questions. We don't have a regular manager's report, but Sam, was there a couple of items you'd like to speak to on the public works side? And I'm sorry if I'm moving kind of fast online, Councilman Baylor and Allison, you've been doing a good job of jumping in and slowing me down. So if we get out in front of you, just holler.
Okay, so
11:30 here. Keep going.
All right, we're gonna roll.
okay, I'll make it quick, Tom. So mostly, I wanted to say that I think we are over the hump of the water situation. We are not out of the woods. The reservoir is still low. Currently, we are using Orca and Murchison for water sources. Meals is shut off completely. It is getting water from Heaney. We gained a couple feet after the big rain. Joel hasn't been back up to check the level, but we are doing much better. Of course, the usage is way down. I think we were at 1.6 versus 3 million a day. So that's really good. And, you know, the support from the community, the canneries, and just the work that the water crew did is pretty amazing. It's when you're not in the midst of it. I mean, I barely remember last week because it was so crazy with the water situation. So, you know, I think it's important to appreciate the water department. So Joe Felix, Joseph Cison, Daniel Outerhar, John Hutchin, Ronalyn Outerhar all made it happen. And Malvin, who's always a water employee, no matter what he does, was a very essential in making it go. And so I just wanted to give them some recognition. And they probably answered 17 million questions for me about how the water system works. And I've learned a lot, and they've been very patient. Also, Heather Brandon helped get a lot of word out for me. The only other thing is the grant's on the grant match is on. This is it. Commit or don't tonight. So I hope it's a lot of money. It's a great project. It's well supported. I mean, if you can picture Adams Street all the way down 2nd Street to the Copper River Highway from Davis, that's a pretty beautiful picture. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Which one's Davis?
Davis is the corner up by Sunset
the
View.
hill.
So it'd go from that
Lodges over here.
corner all the way down to the Copper River Highway.
So
That
up
is-
at the top of the hill, but like by Sunset, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Davis goes this way, 2nd Street intersects it like this.
Mm-hmm.
So the grant is written from the corner of Davis all the way to the Copper River Highway. That's all of 2nd Street, about 1,900 feet.
And what were the matching commitments, Sam?
We were able to get support from NBE, CTC, and CEE for a total of $430,000 to put towards the match. So there's a pretty good table on in your packet to look through and think about it. But again, I will say that we are competing with urban communities. For whatever reason, they made that change in the, actually, I guess I don't know because this is a community grant, not an ATAB grant, if this has always been this way. But so safety is not something that we can have documented. We have some documented accidents, but we don't have injuries. And luckily, we don't have fatalities. But, you know, in urban areas, that's a much, I feel it's terrible saying this, but easier for them to get those points than us. So match is our way to compete with them and outcompete other communities that are our size.
And does that include both sidewalks and the driving surface, or is it just driving surface?
No, it's a total upgrade, stormwater, complete stormwater. There currently is no stormwater other than in the intersections, so Council, Browning, Adams. Otherwise, there's no storm drains other than just right there by the school where they did that new sidewalk. So storm drains, sidewalks, addressing parking, that corner on Council by Bedarkey where the trucks are always pulled out. There's 20 feet of sidewalk when you put both those sides together, 10 feet on each side. We could address that easily. Getting the roof drains, in the old days, that's what you did. You put the roof drains into the sewer drain and it just went out through the plants. Well, now that's not cool. It blows out the system, messes out the bugs, and we get dinged. So removing those, that is a federally funded option they'll do. And looking at the parking and trying to address the parking between Adams and Lake, which is basically CEC, Alanka, and those houses. Because right now, head-in parking, no sidewalks, school zone, kids are walking behind parked cars or in the road, or both. So those are kind of the big ones for the grant. But it would look much like Adams. I mean, you know, there's places where there's no sidewalk. There's places where rebar are coming out of the sidewalk. And we all know how many potholes there are. So those would be eliminated as well. And the O&M that this, you know, the street guys do on 2nd is crazy. I mean, you guys have seen them out there. Like they had 35 hours in a couple weeks trying to just deal after a big event. So that's my sell.
Okay, well, thank you on both counts. I got a chance to see firsthand some of the creative and cost-effective and well-executed solutions to keep the water flowing, and it's just a great job. And I would just add that the utilities are about 40 years old under 2nd Avenue, and when you replace them all at the same time, you aren't go cutting up brand-new roads to fix old utilities or, you know, and so it's just a real cost-effective approach. So great work putting together a compelling package. Any questions, Sam? Okay, city clerk's report.
I've just been real busy doing agendas and minutes and advertising and things. We've had a couple of special meetings with city manager interviews. We had a couple earlier today that went off really well, I think, and 2 more tomorrow. I also worked on quite a few of these agenda items, learned a little bit from Dean how to be a finance director, and reworded a couple of the ordinance and the resolution on just how to do all those line items and budget amendments. And speaking of Louise Stutz earlier, her assistant who was at the meeting when House Transportation met here, Matt Greening, and then Louise both responded to my email when I sent the Irene Weber resolution over to them, and they will be honored to carry it to Juneau. And I said, we just expect it to happen next session, meaning not this special session if they have another special session this fall. So that looks promising, and obviously Kim Weber, after I told her after last meeting that it passed, she was very excited about it and grateful, and anyway, it felt good, nice to do something nice for someone. And that's about all I have to report on. You can answer any questions.
Any questions, council? Thank you, Susan. And I'll just mention, you have been very busy, and we've been in fishing season and whatnot, but we are up on your annual performance.
Oh, you know what? And I looked at that, and I meant to tell you, it's not when we said we weren't going to do it until spring. We actually did it We were
Yeah,
trying
I
to
think we
offset.
Yeah, I think we had talked
with
about maybe
manager.
February or March.
I think February would be best so that it's
Thanks.
before any
A
council.
new
get-
council cycle, yeah. That's right. Thank you for the
So-
reminder. So,
I thought I put it on pending agenda, but if I didn't, I'll put it on.
okay, great. Any questions for Susan? Okay, thank you. We have correspondence as noted in the packet, and under ordinances and resolutions, first item is substitute ordinance 1176. It's an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the transfer of $1,300,000 from the General Reserve Fund for the purpose of bringing current PERS obligations for CCMCA and authorizing amendment to the City of Cordova approved 2019 budget. This is a second reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Meyer?
We just need to get up to date on the PERS for the CCMC employees and for the organization itself, because the city's still going to be liable for it, and we're paying pretty high interest rates and completely locked out of the system right now. So we need to get up to date and tackle the budget problem.
Okay, thank you. And then we have the final reading of the approval scheduled for the second meeting in September.
No, sorry, I'm sitting here frantically looking for my ordinance, and it's because I gave
have
it to
it.
Ann, and I'm like, oh my
Okay.
God, did I forget to put
All
it
right,
in the
sorry.
packet? This is second reading. It's a substitute, if you read my memo, because I added the budget amendment to it.
Okay,
So it had just been a transfer of the money,
Okay.
but since Dean's been teaching us how to do these budget amendments, like I was telling you, I just added the actual line items to the ordinance, and I went past the attorney, and she said it's sufficient, and this is still second reading. It was not significant enough to cause another second reading. So this is second reading.
okay, thank you. Councilman Gleason.
So I just have a question. The actual amount we need is like 1.145 million, so why are we asking for 1.3? Was it because the interest, or, I mean, was there a reason?
I
for
think
that?
the manager put it in that way to, and it says up to 1.3, so that in case the number, I don't know if this is not an exact number, but I believe Greg had told
Councilman
us.
Schaefer.
I understood that the amounts for this year were an estimate because we were locked out of the system.
That's what I had heard.
And so it's just to give some wiggle room with unexpected.
Yeah, it is not an exact number, the
Yeah.
1.14 million, that's estimate, so. Councilman Jones.
According to this sheet, this is updated as of 7/31/19, and so, I mean, we're over a month past then, and we're racking up monthly charges of up to
12%, yeah.
Yeah. So that could explain the additional.
12%.
And it still
and-
does say estimate there for this year's.
I didn't mean to insert myself into this discussion, but I just want to remind council, it'll take a super majority at the next meeting to pass this, but this one is
the one.
just a roll call vote. It doesn't.
No, this is the one.
This is the
This
one.
is second reading, and it would
Okay.
take 7 yeses. And since we are missing one council member, you
This
are
would be
allowed to
7.
vote.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what I was trying to tally up. Councilman Schaefer, then Gleason.
Oh, sorry.
I move to amend the ordinance by changing the account number 104-300-40740 to 104-399-99999. The appropriation of fund balance is that account. That's just an accounting
Clarification.
clarification on page 34. So it's just moving the money around, the or where the money's being
Just giving me the
from.
right line item.
Second.
Okay, so we have an amendment, proposed amendment, and a second on the amendment. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
No,
I
it's
think
just
you just
clarifying the
explained it.
account number.
Okay. Did you follow that online? Is an accounting clarification amendment for an accounting clarification, the correct account number?
Good.
Okay. Did you, Councilman Gleason, did you want to speak to the main motion?
No,
Okay.
actually, I changed my mind.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Councilman Jones?
Oh, not on the amendment.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Main motion, Councilman Jones.
Yeah, I would like to hear some perspective from the other council members around the table, because right now I'm leaning on voting no. That's kind of how I'm leaning right now. So right now, without my vote, this will not pass. And I'd just like to hear some more perspectives and maybe change my mind.
Councilman Gleason.
Okay, so the deal is we're almost 2 years behind on CCMC employees' money. There's people, Trey Losey's wife, been working there for 2 years. She has $0 in her retirement account. In my mind, we have to do this for those people. This isn't something that we're doing just to be nice. I would say we're going to get into legal issues if we don't do this.
I would mention that as mayor, I've had calls from former employees of CCMC that have gone elsewhere that can't roll over their retirements or do anything because of this situation. And I would say there is some posturing about seeking some legal. Unfortunately, the city is liable for this. It is a city liability, City of Cordova liability. Councilman Schaefer.
And in addition to, what we owe, or, the people working there, it's a huge financial knife every month that we're paying. What is it, 12% interest rate on an ever-growing outstanding amount. So
Right.
just
So
from that perspective too, it'd be good to catch up, stop the bleeding.
Councilman Meyer.
I would also like to say we're making good headway of working with NVE and trying to figure out a different way to have good healthcare in Cordova. So we're not just putting a Band-Aid on this and trying to run everything as usual. I think everybody involved understands that the hospital costs a lot of money, but we need to have good healthcare in Cordova, but we need to try to do something differently. So I think paying off the PERS may allow us to be able to make headway on that and try to figure out how to provide healthcare and not go bankrupt and have to go into our permanent fund all the time. The other part of the discussion too is we talked about not having to do it out of the permanent fund and take it out of the central treasury, which would be zeroing out that account, and that wouldn't need 7 council votes to it. But part of the discussion, we decided that we should keep that money there, so just in case some other emergency did come up, that we didn't close out that account essentially. So we thought taking it out of the permanent fund would be a better option for now. But we could take it out of there and not need 7 votes.
See, just a couple. Councilman Baylor.
I think it was Allison.
Allison, I'm sorry, Councilman Allison. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, this is Councilman Allison. Yeah, maybe repeating what has been said in maybe a little bit different way, but we have to pay the PERS. That there's no question about that. We're going to get sued for more than that PERS payment is worth anyway if we do not pay it. So we have to pay that. Now we've got the 2 choices to pay it. We can pay it from the permanent fund, or we can pay it from the general fund. The general fund is essentially the depreciation accounts, the landfill closing costs, and our working fund that we make payroll with every 2 weeks. So that can be done with 4 votes. We can spend all of that money, sure, with 4 votes, and we're going to have to if we don't get it from the permanent fund. So the best option is from the permanent fund. I support the resolution or the motion. However, I do want some strong assurances from CCMC that PERS is a priority payment that they pay with every payroll that goes out. It's not a last resort payment. It's the first priority that gets paid with those paychecks every time. And I want some assurances from CCMC that that's going to happen, because we can't get into this situation again.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I would really echo those comments Dave made there about insurances. And, you know, for the public out there, if anybody's listening or listen later, or for the rest of our councilmen, you know, I've been asked, how did we get to this position? Why wasn't it paid? Are we angry? Yes. We are. I think we could say that we're all angry. I think I've been deceived a little bit. We've asked and asked and asked. Previous councils asked, how are we doing with PERS? You know, oh yeah, we're taking care of it. Obviously it hasn't been. And it wasn't until the current president of the hospital board, Mr. Meyer, came to us and said, you know, you guys are paying 12% interest on this. I mean, for us not to know that right off from the get-go is really discouraging and is really a cause, well, I'm going to go there. But anyway, moving forward, we definitely are going to have some assurances, and we better be kept well informed. And but I will support this. I just don't think we have any choice.
I think because I will be voting on this, I'll speak to it. I'm going to support it as well. A couple of things I haven't heard is that I think the best I can say about what the information council's been provided is that it was nuanced. What happened is PERS, the state gave Cordova an accommodation and said, oh, we're going to give you kind of a grace. And even though you still owe the full 22% match, we're only going to charge you like whatever it was, 5% or some reduced rate for quite some time. They allowed us to accrue this big liability. And so when council's been asking, they've been told, oh, no, we're paying the PERS. Well, they were paying the reduced amount. But meanwhile, in the background, this big liability was accruing. Administration changed, the state comes through and says, you got to pay it all and you got to pay it now. Another piece is that CCMC has been paying a portion of it, I think several $100,000 so far. The state won't even apply that. They said, we are not going to apply your payments to PERS until you come full and true on all of it. And then meanwhile, they're charging this, as council said, CCMC Authority Board Chairman Meyer came and briefed council on this because it was kind of news to him as well, but that we're paying these penalties and this liability is rolling. So that, and also from what I heard of the city manager, and maybe he included the CCMC, they've been negotiating with the state, trying to get an accommodation for the penalties that they're putting on it and the interest and waive that because frankly, some of their culpability in this. And it sounds like they've pretty much they haven't made any headway there. They haven't gotten any accommodation. So I just wanted to share those pieces. But I think I would also concur with Councilman Meyer. I feel like there's been the best progress made in the last 3 months that I've seen in 20 years on a real relationship between the CCMC and Native Village of EAC and having coordinated health care that we can afford moving forward. So I feel a little bit better making a tough and frustrating vote like this with that in pocket. So, Councilman Schaefer?
Oh, no.
Okay. I don't think there's anyone in this table or online that wants to vote for this expenditure, but it's where we are.
We will get sued. Guarantee it. And we're breaking the law, so we're going to lose.
Is there any further discussion or comments, council? Councilman Meyer?
I guess I would just like to ask if Councilman Jones has any other questions for us. I know you've been pretty busy, and we have talked a lot with NVE and had our other meetings and have been getting updates on it. So I guess if you had any questions or concerns, maybe we can answer those for you.
Yeah, how close are we to selling the hospital? That's really what I would like to do. I've said that multiple times, multiple different meetings, or either that or close it.
I think I've heard that on the table as an option for the first time in the last 3 months. I think some of that discussion actually came through in the last couple of leadership meetings that I think there's been maybe some misunderstanding of the communications. There's been a leadership change at NVE, and I think the communication has gotten incredibly clearer I mean, I feel like for the first time, I kind of understand the, how the tribal healthcare system works and NBE's role and relationship with IHS. And I have heard that is, all I've heard up till now is that's off the table, and I've heard that is absolutely an option. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's part of the progress, is just having a little more open dialogue. Is the city prepared to put it up for sale right now? Is there a buyer? We don't have any commitments, but I feel like it's an option.
And I believe maybe Randall can also answer some questions, but I believe they have been sending over data to NVE too, so they can look at all the hard numbers and see if it's something feasible for them to operate.
The information that was provided to Search before is now being provided to NBE, so they can see what, get some insight into the financials and the operations and so forth, so they are in a better position to coordinate. So. Councilman Gleason?
So I'd like to ask Randall something. Okay.
Are you prepared to take some questions? Would you be able to?
It's just a simple one. So
If you could approach the microphone, yeah. And so Randall's the interim CCMC director. Is that right? Is it interim?
No, it's permanent.
Okay, I thought I heard at the last meeting that that you were the executive director, so
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked. So,
And the reason for that is that I'm permanent until there's a different arrangement with NBE or some buyer.
Okay.
So my tenure depends on what new arrangement we have.
You're permanent for now.
Yeah, that's it.
Councilman Gleason.
Okay, so the first question, did you guys get that 500 and some odd amount of $1,000 from Medicare?
We did. We got that Friday.
Did you apply it to PERS?
We're just in the process of doing that. I communicated with Kevin Worley, who's the CFO at PERS, and we communicated today. He's told me he needs $534,000 and a few dollars, and that'll bring us, he's calculated exactly, that'll bring us up through, I think, September of 2018. So anyway, we're starting to input the data into payroll. So we've committed that amount that hasn't moved from the bank. You would like a check. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
And then the other one was, did Bert come and do a walkthrough at the hospital?
I don't know if he did, but there is a walkthrough scheduled for this Sunday that their architect from Anchorage will be here, and I'm going to take him through the clinic.
Okay.
Through the two clinics. That's first on the table is the two clinics in the hospital. And I have given them copies of the blueprints of the hospital just this week, and they'll have a walkthrough Sunday. We've had meetings with their behavioral health folks and our behavioral health to share data about visits and staffing. I've provided them, again, a lot of specific detail about who's working in the clinics, behavioral health clinic. And so we're really in the process of sharing specific data. And so I would feel that we're going to have some culmination of some sort in the very near future, although I don't know exactly when, but definitely sooner than later. That'd be the first step. And I think whatever the next step would be is the hospital. But again, that's, I'm not the one to say that for sure, but we just don't have an option. We have got to have a big brother. We can't do it on our own, financially. We'll definitely keep up with PERS, but it's money from one pocket to another pocket. On the long-term future of the hospital, and I'm a finance guy, we have got to have help. And NVE is the one to do it. And I think it could be a great relationship, but it's got to happen. The council, I can understand your position, about not wanting to put money into us. I wouldn't either. So it's got to happen.
Randall, did I misspeak, or do you have any insight into whether or not we've asked for any kind of accommodation on the interest or any penalties or anything? And has there been any response or from the state or?
Yeah, no, this Kevin Worley, the CFO, I asked him directly about that. He was not aware that there have been any situations where they have abated interest or penalties. And I asked our organization with the state, it's called ASHNA, of all the nursing homes and hospitals. They were not aware of any hospital in the state that had worked out some kind of deal. So I did some due diligence, and it just doesn't look like it's there.
Okay.
And then I'd just like to say to Kenny that I spoke to Greg yesterday, and Greg and Bert are working hand in hand. We have stepped aside, and he's pretty much, those two are in constant contact and moving forward. And I think you should talk to Greg Meyer, and he'll give you the best update you're going to get. And then you can see that they're serious about looking at the hospital by the steps that they're taking. And you've been gone for a long time, but a lot's happened. Like Clay said, in the last 2 months, tons of stuff has happened. So just kind of a...
Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, getting back to the motion there, and I want to throw this out to the group and Dave Allison. I think we've done this before. Is there a way, that, if this goes through, is there a way we can put on this money, I don't know if it's the right word to use, as loan, or somehow it gets paid? If the hospital were to come into some money in some form or fashion, that this would get paid back into the permanent fund?
Randall?
In other words,
I'm sorry.
if let's say the sale goes through this hospital, becomes some way we manage to work this thing out, and there's money transferred or money handled, any of those funds should go back to pay back the permanent fund that we've taken, the money that we've taken out of here.
You know, Councilman Baylor, I'm scratching at my memory a little bit, and maybe Susan or Councilman Allison can help here, but I think the city council has this, we have booked those before as liabilities, and what happens is if the city books those as a receivable and our financials show that we have a big accounts payable balance or something, that kind of skews our books up if there's no real expectation or real path to collecting on those. And I think that we had to make a several $1 million adjustment in our financials 3 years back. So, and someone can jump in and correct me. But
I think, if I remember correctly, when we sold the library museum, because we took money out of the permanent fund to pay off on the civic center, we, as a council, said when that money comes in from the sale of the old library museum, that would go back into the permanent fund. So I'm quite sure we did that process. So I guess I was thinking something along those lines.
maybe the sale of the hospital or something, but anyway, I don't know how to answer that question. If maybe Randall could speak to it, or Susan, or.
Yeah, on our books, we show, on the hospital books, we show it as a loan to the city. So this PERS will be in the loan category, and that's why our auditors characterize it as well. And then correspondingly with the city, it's just the reverse.
Okay.
So it is a current liability that could be called on the hospital books.
So I stand corrected, Councilman Baylor. That's actually how it's going to be transacted and booked. Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I was just gonna just say that they were always gifts to the hospital up until Providence promised us they were going to make us money within a year. At that point, we started calling them all loans. And yeah, we're up to like $4 million or something now that everything we've given them since Providence's contract to take over was enacted has been a loan. So I think the only negative of that is if the hospital were on its own trying to get a loan, any bank or whatever would look at that $4 million debt, or now $5.5 million debt to the city as an obligation of theirs as debt. But other than that, since we're a city, it just stays on both people's books and really doesn't matter. It just sits there until, if they do, if we do get somebody offer us $100 million for the hospital someday, it would get paid back. So.
Okay. Councilman Gleason.
We own the building, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So if there's some sort of sale on that, it would come to us anyways, right?
If there's a monetary amount in the sale, yes.
So we could possibly recover money that way without putting anything in this ordinance.
I think there's one right now that is a loan that actually you might have paid us on, maybe not in 19, but in 18, I think like a $50,000 or $75,000. No?
For the pharmacy.
Oh.
Yes.
The pharmacy. But I do believe that a lot of that debt was cleared from our books, because in an audit, I think in 17 or 16, there was like a ridiculous amount of money that we didn't know what it was, and it was clearing it from our books because it sat around for too long. It was like in $3.5 or $4 million.
That's kind of what I was remembering. But, okay. So main motion, and Councilman Jones, appreciate you requesting that. And also for the record, appreciate you calling in when you were in range to and participating in the meetings you could, recognizing that you work and are not always in range. So that's appreciate that gesture of getting educated here.
But I make just one comment. In my scheme of things, just looking at where we're at, is step one, the hospital cannot survive. I say that again, we cannot survive without, and it happens to be NVE helping us, or taking us over, or some combination. The first step is this PERS, that 1.3. To me, that's step one. It just has to happen. Step two is the clinics moving over. And then step three would be the whole hospital. And financially, there's no choice. There just is no choice. So we need the money. We're going to make this change. We're doing everything we can to make this happen so the city doesn't have this continuing obligation. So.
Okay. Do you have any further questions or comments, Councilman Jones, or council in general? Okay, roll call vote.
So on the main motion on substitute ordinance 1176, David Allison?
Yeah.
Ann Schaefer?
Yes.
Jeff Gard is absent. Melina Meyer?
Yes.
David Gleason?
Yes.
Tom Baylor?
Yes.
Ken Jones?
Reluctantly, yes.
And Mayor Copeland?
Yes.
And that makes 7-0, so that passes.
Okay, the next item is substitute resolution 08-19-31, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, establishing and approving lease terms for the lease of facilities in the Shelter Cove area from the Prince William Sound Science Center for a term of 2 years for approximately $2,200 for use of the area by the City of Cordova Parks and Recreation Department.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to it, Councilman Gleason?
I'm not in favor of this because I think the Science Center just doesn't want to pay their property tax. So they're going to bill us and we're going to bill them, and it's going to be a wash. And I don't like that. We pretty much gave that land away. And this is just my opinion. And we got $50,000 camping park and parking lot down there. And if there's no building going up, there's no reason not to let Bedarkey collect the $3,000 or $4,000 a year that they make off of that. and to have to pay $1,100 to make 3,000 or 4,000, just, that doesn't seem like a good deal to me. I think that the land was a steal, and the Science Center should not be upset about paying $1,100 of property tax. That's all I got.
Councilman Meyer, then Jones.
I guess I don't have too much of an opinion on it. I don't look at it as a way for Prince William Sound Science Center not paying property tax. I know that property had deed restrictions on it, so we weren't collecting any property tax before they purchased it. And I think that they have a lot of fundraising to do because they're going to be putting in a pretty expensive campus there. I think it'll be good for Cordova. I could see why we would want to lease it from them for the next 2 years, because it's probably going to take them that to get the funding. And we don't have a lot of camping sites in Cordova, so keeping that going I don't think is too much work for Parks and Rec, unless maybe staff can say if something different, but I don't think it's that difficult to pass this for me.
Councilman Jones.
I just have a question for staff. What is the current lease on the harbor facility that we leased to the Science Center, the building that they're in? If I recall correctly, it was $1 a year.
They pay. I don't know the amount, though. Not off.
They pay a monthly.
I think initially they had a deal like that, and then when we relooked at leases several years ago, all of them went up to market rate, for most of them. Or to using our normal method, which is 10% of assessed value plus 6% sales tax.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, when you get a chance.
Yes, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, when I first read this, it was kind of disappointing to me, and I'm not in favor of it. And at first, I was kind of disappointed in the Science Center. You know, we did literally give that away. And you can talk about any codes or covenants that we have on that property, but it would take 15 minutes for a good lawyer to get you through that. Maybe even the Beechers could do it for us. But, you know, then I thought, you know, actually the Science Center, we probably could learn from them. Science Center, it works off grants and other monies, and they're really doing their fiduciary responsibility there. They're making every dollar count, and they're looking at this $1,000 or $1,100 of taxes that they have to pay is, you know, it's important to them. That $1,000 is important to them. I only wish that our staff and this council would act the same way. That money's important to me. These taxpayers are paying this in, and we gave them a heck of a deal on that. That's a $400,000 piece of property all day long. We got them built for $50,000. For them to hold us hostage to use those platforms, that really doesn't cost them to have that anything. It'd be a different story if they were doing maintenance on a building. But no, I agree with this. I think they should thank us for giving us a great deal, and the status quo should stay the same. And when they're ready to build, they're ready to build.
Okay, I've heard two in opposition, I think, and one in favor. Councilman Schaefer?
I'd just like to make a comment about the taxes that the Science Center pays. I don't see this as a move for them to get out of paying the property tax. They're a nonprofit organization, and as such, don't have to pay any sales tax in town. And they choose to pay sales tax on every purchase we make in town. And so we are a taxed entity, or the Science Center is a taxed entity in Cordova. We contribute a lot to the local economy through those sales taxes on those purchases we make in town. So I don't see this as a way to get out of our property tax or their property tax. It seems to me like just continuing the partnership that the city has shown with the Science Center and developing the campus here in Cordova, because it is such a good economic stimulus and for the community. So I will be supporting it.
Okay. Further discussion, council?
We do pay, we pay sales tax and property tax.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, when I first read this too, I was a little bit disappointed that it made it sound like the Science Center was giving everything and the city was getting everything. And I too recall that we gave them a heck of a deal on the property. I guess my feelings now, you know, and it's probably a fair trade to do that. However, after seeing things for the last few months this summer, you know, I'm not sure that we need those platforms. You know, we had several motorhomes parked all over town, not paying anything, and nobody seemingly telling them to go to the paid parking spots. We had one 100 yards from these platforms that was there for 2 months or a month and a half, or I don't know how long it was. It seemed like a long time. That wasn't paying anything, and those platforms sat empty. So I know that they were busy sometimes, but I'm not convinced that we even need those properties. And if there was that much of a need for parking spaces, I'm sure the Science Center could rent those out as well. So I'm not in favor of the resolution either at this point in time, or the resolution, whatever it is, the lease.
Okay. Further discussion, council. Councilman Jones?
Yep, we sold this property to them, and I think that if they would like to lease spaces, that is their purview. And I do not believe the city needs to be leasing those platforms at this time. If they need revenue to construct their campus, that could be a stream that they pursue. We built that, put $50,000 into that area, and we sold it to them for $50,000. And they got themselves a nice campground.
So I think I've heard 4 in opposition and 2 in favor. Is there any further discussion, council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails. Resolution 09-19-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, designating capital improvements projects, page 54. And I think to facilitate this discussion, 2 items I want to bring to the forefront. Susan, City Clerk, and I discussed this just beforehand, and I think actually Vice Mayor Meyer brought this up. There was an item number 2 for school repairs. And again, maybe Council Allison and Baylor can refresh my memory. I know that we were looking at the leaky windows on Mount Eccles. We were looking at the HVAC system at Mount Eccles. We were looking at a school gym floor repair. I think those were kind of what we had lumped together as school repairs. I think those items have all been corrected. So if that sounds right, then, and we do have the Public Works Director here, then maybe that item could come off the list.
I never got in touch with
That was
that.
my recollection.
Sorry, okay.
Okay.
You agree?
Well, I don't know if the repair was supposed to be gym floor is done, HVAC is happy. I don't think there's anything else.
Okay, so just for the record, and I know Sam wasn't at the mic, but for Councilman Allison and Baylor, she said yes, to her knowledge, the windows are no longer leaking, the floor has been repaired, and the HVAC system has been functioning. So, so I would suggest maybe taking that off the list. And then one you might consider adding is water source, and was one that came up in the last meeting. And did you want to speak to that at all, Sam? Or? And you may, I think you actually suggested that. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, can we get this on the table so we can?
Oh, yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would move to approve the list as it stands right now so we can get it started.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you. For point of order, to Mayor Copeland.
Mr. Mayor, I move to amend to remove the school item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Mayor, I would move to add an item, if this is not the way Sam would like it. Maybe she correct me, but maybe the, freshwater, would you call it freshwater study of new source? Something to that.
Yeah, I've been trying to come up with a good name and I haven't done very well. So we have a proposal from an engineer to do a study. So we have that paid for already through LT2. So I think the CIP list would be something like implementing
The results of the study.
recommended,
Can I suggest something maybe a little more general, like just develop a community water supply or alternate water supply or expanded water supply? That,
Expanded water supply is
well, and
palatable to
I
me.
would like to just not only do a new or expand. I mean, I think we need to look within what is in our infrastructure as it is and what are the bottlenecks, because there is some things that maybe we could even change within our own infrastructure to improve.
Water supply
How about
improvements.
update our current water system?
I like that.
Or enhance.
okay. I think your Public Works Director likes that suggestion, Councilman Baylor. So I'm sorry, that was update community water supply? Or upgrade?
That would be correct.
Upgrade.
Did Allison second that?
Yeah, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend to add upgrade community water supply. Councilman Jones.
What number are we putting that in as? Are we replacing school repairs with this item? I guess I was a little confused there.
So council, right now, number one is Port and Harbor renovations with several sub-items. South Harbor replacement, shipyard fill expansion, harbor basin expansion, south fill and Sawmill Avenue expansion, general upgrades. I will point out that your harbor master, Mr. Chanel, is in the audience and he's listening. The second priority that we took off was school repairs. The next is large vessel maintenance facility, shipyard. The next was public safety building. The next was road improvements, ADA sidewalk improvements, including Cordova Center staircase, Adams 6th and 7th sidewalk drainage project, one we might take a look at, the ferry trail. And then 6th was hospital upgrades. And so if you'd like to, Councilman Baylor, suggest where you might slip that in, or council could discuss.
Well,
I think it should go in number 2.
that would be my recommendation, and we can always change it as we go down the list here.
Okay, upgrade community water supply as number 2, and we'll put it in there for now. Any further discussion on that? Councilman Jones, then Schaefer?
No, not on this item, sorry.
No, not on this item. Sorry.
Okay, then on that item, amend to make upgrade community water supply number 2 priority. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Another amendment? Councilman Jones, then Schaefer.
Yeah, I would like to amend the CIP list to remove hospital upgrades.
Yeah, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to remove hospital upgrades. Any discussion?
I want to sell it.
I think you have company. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, you all are making fantastic progress. I'm just gonna, as I read through these, okay, no, Councilman Jones, then Schaefer?
No, I'm.
Councilman
that was
Schaefer.
fine.
I was going to say for number 5, is the Adams Street project completed?
Yeah.
So
Adams
we could
Street's-
amend to remove Adams from Part B
And add
of number
second.
5, and then add the Second Street project.
Sam?
Sure. Also, the grant has been awarded for the stairs, so I think that could
Oh,
come off.
Okay.
I mean, because we wouldn't be asking legislative, we still have to pay the match, but
mm-hmm.
And we got that grant, that's right.
Wait, 6th and 7th Street sidewalks is done?
That's the one
Lake
we.
Avenue.
that's the one we did not get.
Oh.
Okay, let me
We'll try to-
capture the agenda real quick before I get lost. So it was.
I'd like to amend number 5
Yes.
to remove Part A, the Cordova Center staircase,
Mm-hmm,
remove Adams,
mm-hmm.
add Second Street,
Okay, is item A?
sure, as item A.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it.
So B
6th and 7th,
remains
do we still want those on there?
as 6th and 7th Street sidewalk drainage project, yes?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I think it would be great to kind of have a general sidewalk improvement or some, drainage sidewalk improvement, because sometimes the grant is geared towards kids or sometimes it's geared towards, I don't know.
Could we say, would it help to say something like which may include? Or you are you suggesting leave the whole thing general, or?
I think we could leave 6th and 7th as is, and or 7th and 8th, whatever, 6th and 7th, and then have a third kind of general one that you could,
Okay,
that could be referenced in a grant application as.
okay,
Like maybe add number D and just say general sidewalks and drainage.
So B could be the 6th and 7th streets as well as the 2nd Street, because that's more of the specific. And A could be upgrading or updating sidewalks and drainage. More general.
Okay.
I like the idea of keeping the Second Street as its own bullet point because it's a huge project and should be a big priority for our community. I think it's a big deal to get that whole stretch of road replaced.
so
Deserves
that's,
its own bullet point.
so that's how you kind of stated the amendment first is,
Having second.
2nd Street is A, 6th and 7th is B, Ferry Trail is C, and then D, general improvements?
Sure.
Okay, is there a second?
But what do you call it? General sidewalk and drainage improvements?
Yeah, general road improvements / ADA sidewalk improvements, I think is the main heading.
Okay.
For general streets and sidewalks. I know.
Yeah.
Yep. Capture it all and everything, Susan.
I get it.
Is the ferry trail a priority?
Drainage.
Is that even a reality?
Is there maybe we can get a second and then go take it to discussion?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. So what I've got written so far is A, 2nd Street upgrade, B, 6th and 7th Street sidewalk drainage project, C, ferry trail, D, general streets and sidewalks improvements. I'm sorry, Councilman Jones.
I was just curious if the ferry trail is a
yeah.
priority to
Ferry
this
trail.
council.
Is that still a priority to
Can
council?
we remove that?
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I had the same question last time that we did this, what it was, and it was that stretch between the ferry terminal and Main Street where there's no
Yeah,
sidewalks or
there's a
anything,
gap
there's
in
that
foot
blind
traffic.
corner.
So
I think
making
it'd be
that
good
a
to have that.
sidewalk?
Oh, is that a sidewalk or a trail? I don't know.
I think originally, I mean, it's been on here for a long
Originally, it was
Kind
a
of a trail
trail,
right
Second
now.
Street across the top of the hill was what the original trail that I saw in like the 2008 plan,
Like up and over and down?
up and over from Second Street, up and down.
Oh.
And
That
that
was a
crosses
trail.
public property, or not like private.
Private property, yes.
And that was the plan that I saw, and it has not gone anywhere. If it is a sidewalk from the end of Main Street past Cannery Row, I think is what it's called, and then up through the cut, I could support that, but as far as a trail over the hill, I don't see myself being in favor of that.
You're going right through Jan Scott's land to get down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
could
what
send
he
it to the
suggested.
Trails Committee.
The last time it came up, we discussed it as a sidewalk connecting Main Street to the ferry.
I hadn't.
So can we reclassify it as ferry sidewalk?
Second.
Semantics matter, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, any objection? Motion and second? Okay, ferry sidewalk. I think that's a little clearer, at least
Ferry
it
terminal
follows
sidewalk.
the right of way, ferry terminal sidewalk.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I'm not, whatever. It's just, when I saw Ferry Trail, it made me think of the old plan from over a decade ago that went up and over the hill.
yeah, well, good. The others will probably think that too, so,
That's quite a hill.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, that's within Ann's amendment.
yes.
Sounds
I
good.
heard a amendment in a second, so anybody want me to restate that, or is there any further discussion?
As long as you have good notes.
Okay,
I can't read.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
What a
sir.
mess.
I heard one aye online.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman
Allison.
Baylor,
Oh, Baylor.
Baylor. Sorry, but you do sound a bit the same. Yes.
I have a question maybe for Kenny or the harbor master. I'm looking at number 1 there, port and harbor renovations. It just seems like shipyard fill expansion and harbor basin expansion are kind of long shots. It would seem to me you'd want something you might possibly get, like the general upgrades and that lift and that sort of thing, but I would yield to you. You guys are in the harbor department more.
So if I understand the question, whether adding all these specific items is better than just having a general item?
Well, no, not so much that. It's the last item, and I don't know if it makes difference in priorities. It's the last and general upgrades, waste oil building, harbor crane, those are probably realistic items to get. You'd think you'd want those maybe up at, B or something like that, or does it make a difference on where it is in the list?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering the same thing, if those are listed in the order of priority. I think they kind of were. So I think that's a question to council. Do you want to move that general upgrades up in priority, because those might be easier to get? Would you like to speak to those, Tony, or since you're here? Thank you.
I don't remember what I just read. Oh. So, I mean, we definitely want to keep South Harbor on there right now. We haven't got our money for that. We're still putting in for that, so keep that there. But I would agree that, I mean, you could kind of just generalize it as port and harbor improvements or upgrades. If you wanted to narrow it down, would be one there. I don't think, well, I guess Southfill is not really the harbors. It's more of the cities. Southfill, Sawmill Ave extension. I think general upgrades kind of fits in with a lot of them, and then, yeah, with the upgrades would be the shipyard, would be in the harbor. It'd be more generalized, so you could kind of leave it open.
I think what he's asking too is whether we should move general upgrades further up the list, like maybe B, right?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman, was that Ellison?
Yeah, Allison. Yeah, I was just going to point out that Whitney has told us several times when he's been on the line, when we've been doing this list, that it really doesn't matter too much where they're at. They'll look at the list, and if they've got a bunch of harbor money, then they'll see the harbors are number 1 and go from there. But he really said it didn't matter too much on the top few things.
Okay, so Councilman Schaefer.
What's the Southville and Sawmill Avenue extension?
Oh my God, I thought we took it off last
I thought we took it
yeah.
off when the last time we did this,
Yeah.
but perhaps not.
I don't know if we took it off, I can tell you what it is.
Wasn't it, yeah. I think we discussed taking it off at
So
least.
the original idea was to create either fill, what's the name of the boat? The Grebe, where the Grebe, and around that area, in order to take Sawmill, which is the street that runs down past the baseball field and ends at the
So it connects over.
yeah, and so you would connect. So it could be a trail or a road. There's been 100 million different discussions on how to get across there.
Walkway.
Connect the high school and the ballpark to the Southville.
Yep, and we, well, part of it was the safety of the kids going to the ball fill out at Whiteshed. Also, part of it was kids walking to
AC for school lunch.
and lunch in town.
Trying to take pedestrian traffic off the corner by Harville's, where all the boat trailers are cutting the corner. And
So
I think in the Southville study, it was talked about a lot, and the cost was so high, that they kind of moved sidewalks first on Railroad and then dropped it. So
Sam, from what the harbor master was saying, is that more appropriate down under road improvements?
well, I would agree with him that it doesn't belong in the harbor, for sure.
Still a priority?
Well, I mean, I don't make, if you're asking for my opinion, no, it's not a priority right now. I think we have other things that we really need to deal with, especially if White Shed Road's gonna come down, which when, it's not if, it's when White Shed Road gets completed and that walkway gets done, you know, we've kind of addressed some of those things. But
And I think one of the things council's done over the last 2 or 3 revisions of this is reduced it from a long list, like 10 or 11 items, to a tighter list of higher priorities, so. Councilman Meyer?
I'd like to make an amendment to move 1D, the Southville Sawmill Avenue extension from the list.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend it to remove the Southville and Sawmill Avenue from this list. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
So then back to Councilman Baylor's question on general upgrades. Does council would council like to move that up higher in the priority?
I think Mr. Allison, I think I remember that statement too. I think he's correct. As long as it's in there and you're clear on what you want, unless the harbor master has a different thought, I think we're fine the way it is.
Okay, I think so too, Councilman Baylor. I kind of remember that it's what's important. So, and maybe that's a good segue, and it gets back to a point you made a couple, 3 meetings ago about like Crater Lake, for example, being a specific thing listed in the comprehensive plan. And I think one of the councilmen, maybe Councilman Meyer and Susan, earlier in the office, looking at the agenda, we're kind of discussing, does council, we thought, you know, these should all be in our comprehensive plan since we have it right in front of us. And maybe council might want to just forward this to staff and the consultant and make sure that, you know, maybe this could be folded into the comprehensive plan since these are priorities. And I'm seeing nods from your city planner. So.
He's reminding me tomorrow.
So I guess I would just say, consider that done, council. Anything else you would like to add or remove from this, Councilman Jones?
Well, one thing I guess I could ask Tony about would be, do we want to keep the shipyard fill expansion under Port and Harbor renovations? It's not really a renovation as much as it is an upgrade. I could see it fitting better under number 3, large vessel maintenance facility. And then instead of having the AKA shipyard building, just go AB, have expansion and shipyard building as 2 bullet points under the large vessel maintenance facility.
That sounds like a motion for an amendment.
So moved.
Oh my God. What? Are we allowed to make all these amendments?
Only if you don't straighten us out. Is there a second?
A number of amendments.
I didn't quite understand what he's asking.
So what he's suggesting is that under ports and harbor renovations, there's a shipyard fill expansion. And he's saying that isn't really a port and harbor renovation. It seems like it's more appropriate down here under a large vessel maintenance facility, shipyard building. So move this down, so it's down here under large vessel maintenance facility and have A, shipyard building, B, shipyard fill expansion. Or A, shipyard fill expansion and B, shipyard building.
And then if you were looking for a C, I know, Tony, we had a meeting where we talked about a lot of different improvements down in that area. I'm not sure if we're going to be seeking any capital improvement type money for that. Okay. We're talking about doing an outhouse.
Okay, so I heard a second. So that was a motion to amend to do that in a second, and Councilman Jones' discussion. I'm sorry, you mentioned item C there.
Yeah, well, we talked about adding more electrical pedestals into the area that was just vacated. But,
okay.
And then we talked about, so electrical projects, lighting projects. There was discussion of an outhouse facility, and that could be like a seed if we're looking for any grant funding for that type of projects. I'm not sure if Tony wanted to pursue those or not. I know that was brought up at the last Harbor Commission meeting as a priority down there.
Maybe, and just I'm thinking out loud, but this gets back to Councilman Baylor and Allison's comments from Bitney. If we have shipyard fill expansion and shipyard building in there, maybe shipyard expansion's kind of broad enough. As long as we have shipyard in our list somewhere, we have some flexibility with the legislature.
Yeah, maybe shipyard expansion and improvements.
And improvements. And is that okay, second?
Wait, say it again? I think it should be 2 shipyard. A, shipyard fill expansion, and B, shipyard vessel, or shipyard building. No? All right, what are you calling the header of it now? 2 is going to be,
I think it's 3.
3.
3,
oh,
because upgrade community water supplies 2 now.
all right.
Number 3,
I would agree with the mayor's suggestion on the shipyard there, and
Which is what?
as far as kind of general.
Shipyard fill expansion and improvements as number.
Just as number 3, no A's and B's?
And then,
No, I think we want to have shipyard building in there as a priority. I mean, it might not be us that puts it in, but I would like to keep that as a community priority.
that's A.
A, and then B would be shipyard fill expansion and improvements. Or shipyard expansion and improvements.
Yeah. Shipyard
And what's
fill,
the header?
right?
The
large vessel maintenance facility. Large vessel maintenance facility is 3. Shipyard building is sub-item A. Shipyard expansion and improvements is item B.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second on that. Is there further discussion?
Is expansion of the shipyard a priority? for
Of the
city?
Harbor
Expanding
Commission.
and filling more, yeah?
Would be, you
could
use the room.
That's what this was proposed as, is to fill that area down there and actually expand the footprint because it's at
And
capacity.
it is zoned for
Gonna
that.
be free,
And
right,
it- and
Tony?
it is zoned for that. Does that answer your question, Councilman Meyer? Schaefer? Okay, thanks. Councilman Meyer?
Just as a clarification, so Harbor Basin expansion, is that going away?
That's still there. as-
That's still under 1?
That's a priority.
Yeah,
Okay, I was just
it becomes
making my notes.
B, I guess, since B is going away.
Okay.
Those came about, the Harbor Basin expansion came about when we had a slight glimmer of hope of some sort of infrastructure package coming from the federal government. That never really happened. And
Yeah.
we were told to get something together and turn it in. And so that's kind of, we had a couple meetings, I think 2 years ago now, and we came up with this plan of making the harbor, not only getting new docks, but also making it bigger. And then nothing ever happened with it because there was no federal dollars for that.
But now there are four or five federal packages that include harbor funds.
Right.
I mean, available right now.
Yeah, so that could be something we go for a Corps of Engineers grant down the road. Right now, the priority is getting the floats replaced, and then we're gonna look at other grants for that.
Okay. Is there further discussion on this amendment? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Does anyone want me to read through the list? Okay, I'm hearing a no.
Clear as
Any
mud.
additions, corrections, or reductions? Okay, so main motion, the CIP list, as amended, and amended. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the CIP is approved. And good job, council. It's a lot of heavy lifting in a short period of time. I think that's a record. Where's my agenda? Okay, the next item is Resolution 09-19-35, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing amendment to the 2019 budget in the amount of $97,000 to fund roof and wall repairs for the Bob Corn Pool building, this being the appropriation that's companion to the RFP. Item 10.
So move.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion, Councilman Schaefer.
I think we kind of discussed it earlier when we were talking about the contract negotiation. So, no.
Okay, further discussion?
It's a roll call.
Yes, yeah, comment?
Yes, Councilman Baylor.
I just hope we will have a strong inspection person on this project when it moves forward.
Okay, I'm seeing a Public Works Director nodding. Further discussion? All those in favor?
It's a
roll call vote, sorry, roll call vote.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Jeff Gard is absent. Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Ken Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the next item is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, supporting application to the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities Community Transportation Program grant for the Cordova 2nd Street Upgrades Project, authorizing expenditure of to provide a required match, and committing to continued maintenance operations of 2nd Street.
And that's a capital O, sorry. We got dinged for the capitals. Should have been a capital.
So what's the will of council?
I had to change all of these to capital because
Let's move to approve with 15% as the amount.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have $8,155,000, and I'm gonna whip out my calculator just so council has the number in front of them.
I think we have it on the
It's
sheet.
already, there's a.
Is it? Okay, sorry.
There's a lot of
Didn't get back that far.
math done for us.
Can someone throw a number at me here?
so it's
He said the highest.
15.
Well, he said 15, but in the table
I
in
think
front
it
of us,
was
it says
15.03.
15.03.
So it'd be $983,070.
and 15.03%.
74.
What?
Table 2
Oh,
with the map.
974, 273.
Got it. Okay.
Question?
Councilman Baylor.
So, as we get into this, Public Works Director mentioned that we will be running storm drains down the road where there is no storm drains. I'm assuming that those buildings will be connecting to that storm drain. Oh, and this is probably where I'm gonna get some hate mail, but like when you run a water line, usually the property owners get assessed when there's a new service put in.
Mhm.
I mean, they don't carry the full amount, but there is an assessment. Is there any thought to that, or am I way off the ballpark on that?
No, you're right. I talked to the DOT guys, and it is a federally funded option that they will pipe the roof drains into the new storm drains. I don't know if that is from the property line, from the right of way to the storm drain, or if it's the entire entire pipe from the building to the drain, basically the entire service line. That is something that we will work out then, but yes, that is my intention on how to deal with it if they won't pay the entire cost. There's only, it's not every building on that block, it's mostly between Council and Browning.
So it'd be to create an assessment district and then just charge.
Let's figure out, or bill them directly, or,
Okay.
Because it's gonna really, at the minimum, they will pay from the right-of-way property line to the storm drain. So it's gonna be a minimum, a smaller amount than if they had to pay the total cost. All the digging, all the pipe, everything's gonna be paid for. So we'll kind of have to feel out what that cost is and how much, we want to work it into a payment type process.
Okay. Good point, Councilman Baylor.
Another comment?
Yes.
So if this goes forward, and I think it goes back to our two co-ops, we're probably going to want to do some upgrades there also. I think the mayor's mentioned that, and generally speaking, they're pretty good with working with city crews and helping to, so we don't get double costs on some projects and working together. So that there might be some cost savings if everybody worked together. So I guess I'm looking at trying to support this, and as we work as a community and maybe get this done, it might work out. Thank you.
Councilman Bailey, I'm not sure if this is your question, but since I'm in a position to answer it, Cordova Electric estimated that we would have $300,000 in cost savings by doing this cooperatively with the city and other utilities. And also there's a huge future benefit of having all the same age facilities and stuff, so we don't end up digging on top of each other and whatnot. So we use that as a basis to make a cash contribution to the project, recognizing we're probably going to save more than that by doing it now and doing it as a project. And again, our infrastructure is 40 years old in Second Street. We've already had outages and problems with that aging cable, and I know telephone was the same vintage, so.
Yeah, and since it would be a DOT project, it would run through DOT, much as Hippie Cove culvert replacements are, where the contract would include everybody within it. And so the contract would include working with the utilities. It would all be done succinctly along that road.
Yeah,
and
we go out,
planned out.
we can spend as much as a week, a full week of 1 or 2 man hours just getting locates. But then the great thing is the state puts all those into their drawings, and we essentially end up with a utility as-built. So it's just a great way to do it all at once. So I just wanted to make sure, I hadn't quite finished, I just wanted to make sure that the motion inserts 15.03% match for a total of $974,273 is the motion on the, in front of council.
And it's
And Mr.
0.03.
Mayor?
because of the-
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, as the maker of the motion, I defer to Councilman Baylor because it's getting on 1 o'clock in the morning out there. The reason I put in the highest amount for the match was if we're going to do this, number one, we need to be serious about it. We've got 3 great community partners that are all anteing up their share or more than their share. It's a good investment in Cordova. It gets us a good project, and it brings an $8 million project to Cordova over the course of several years, so it doesn't have to all be paid all in one lump sum, so we can plan for it in our strategic plan. So if we're going to go for it, we need to be serious about it, and if we get it, then we'll deal with it at that point in time. But if we want it, we got to be serious about it to at least give us the best shot at getting it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Allison. And the second, was that Councilman Meyer?
I seconded it.
Want to speak to the motion?
No, I'd just like to echo Councilman Allison's comments that, yeah, if we're going to go for it, we should put everything in it, and it gives us time to plan for it over the 5 years of the project, and be a couple years before it would even start, so.
Thank you, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo those comments, and, I think doing the 15% will put us in the best spot to hopefully get this grant rather than the 10%. And we have 3 great partners that have come in and put in, just under $500,000 to get this project moving forward. And I think it would be, we would be good to do the highest amount or do the 15% to get it there.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Say anything?
So we moved, council, you moved 2 items from the,
Consent calendar.
from the consent agenda to ordinances and resolutions. So item 6 now becomes item 21, and that's resolution 09-17-37.
Well, he did
Sorry,
36.
09, I'm sorry, Susan.
Oh, I thought-
09-19-36. That's correct. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, approving the final plat for RDG Warehouse Subdivision Edition 1.
Somebody going to move it?
Move to approve?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Meyer?
Looking at this, it looks like it cleans up some property lines and looks like the Zoning and Planning Commission recommends doing that, so I don't see any reasons not to.
Councilman Jones, any comments?
Nope.
Further discussion, council? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item is Resolution 09-19-37, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, approving the site plan from David Romhilt for commercial outside storage on Lot 3, Block 2, Southfield Development Park.
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second?
in a second. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councilman Schaefer?
No, I was just bringing it up so
Okay.
we can have the discussion.
Any discussion?
I was doing about the same. I guess I do have one question, though, is maybe for staff. If these are going to be kind of temporary buildings, how does that affect property tax? Rather than it being a permanent building.
Yeah, I think we've talked to the assessor about it in the past, and I think these containers can be assessed for property tax. But it's been a while since,
I don't know. These are storage containers.
yes.
Yeah, I feel like we assess them elsewhere. I'm pretty sure we.
I think it depends on how temporary or permanent they are, but
If they're there on January 1st of the year, I think that they get taxed.
Okay, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I'm not going to support this, and I think the easiest way, I originally supported selling this property to the developer because he's done a great job with other projects. There was some folks that were not in favor of selling the library museum because these other lots were undeveloped, and we got assurances that they were going to get developed along with the library museum. So that did sway my vote to sell that other building to the same developer. And I guess if I look at this, if we still own that lot and this was their proposal, I don't think it would get past planning and zoning. Somebody just to put a bunch of Connex vans on there that I'm pretty sure they'll never leave. So I'm all about infrastructure. I think buildings are where it's at. It's a solid asset. Even if the business was out of business, you always have that building there. You always have your property tax. I'm not in favor of this at all.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I questioned earlier, I think y'all got an email this afternoon, Tom might have not seen that yet, but I was questioning the deed of trust that was originally on that piece of property, and I suspected that he just bought that out and paid the liquidated damages on it, which is what was confirmed that he had done. So ultimately, he can do what he wants with this property. I would agree with Tom that, that whole deed of trust thing was whacked, and I said it when it first went into effect. I wasn't on the council at the time, but was negotiating for some property for Baron Wolf at the time. But nonetheless, we sold that property with the deed of trust based upon the premise of a building being built there. It was in competition with some other projects that may not have, but may have been built and had a structure there and a business. But we're past that point. He's paid the fee. That land is his with no deed of trust, and And I'm not so sure that, for just storage containers, he would need a building permit or a waiver or whatever, a site plan review at all. I don't think everybody else in town that has a storage shed out back has a site plan reviewed at all. But it's some infrastructure, that lot with the other buildings that developer owns, probably will never have a building on it anyway, perhaps at some point in time. But storage units are needed and are as good a use as any. And I think since he's gone through the site plan process, that it's worth approving and trying to get some taxes out of it. Because personally, I don't believe he probably need a site plan review for storage trailers. But anyway, I'll support it. Although, as Tom said, I'm not real happy about it not getting its original site plan completed and going to this stage. But
Okay. So it sounds like I'm hearing one opposed and one in favor. Further discussion, council? Councilman Jones?
Yeah, I'm gonna support it, but I'm not happy about it for the same reasons stated by previous council members. I would have liked to see the original plan developed.
Okay, and just for those online, I'll mention we do have the planner available if there's any questions. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Councilman Baylor, and then Meyer.
I'm not trying to change anybody's vote here. You got two sound good reasons, but I just want to throw this out there also on the Northville. We had a businessman that wanted to build some more storage units down there, and we said no, we're short on land. We want to save what we got for businesses, and which we did. We sold that lot to Mr. Brown. So then we're turning around with this prime piece of property, and I realize quasi out of our control now, and here we are letting somebody not even build storage units, but just Connex vans. So I'm disappointed. I think I was led astray there. I know things change, but I still would have rather seen a building there. So anyway, I'm still going to vote no. Thank you.
Councilman Meyer.
Maybe this is something staff can answer. At the end, it says summary and alternative. It says council may add special conditions. What kind of special conditions can council entertain, or what's?
Well, so right now there is one special condition, which is that the storage containers must adhere to the required setbacks of 15 feet in the front and 5 feet on the sides and rear. Generally the planning commission and city council can add special conditions as they want to site plan reviews. But I would also point out that a part of this, they had to get a conditional use permit for, and the conditional use permit had some special conditions, and those are at the top of page 10. There were 4 of them. The site plan review requirement was number 2, which is why we're doing this. Number 4 is the more interesting one, and that's that the conditional use permit actually expires after 3 years, at which point the planning commission can extend the conditional use permit. And that's kind of to keep a check on it, to make sure things are still clean and orderly, and the lot is being used as was requested.
Councilman Gleason.
So what you're saying is in 3 years, we would be back here.
No, so this is a site plan review. The conditional use permit is a permit that is only through the planning commission. So in 3 years, if they want to continue using the lot in this manner, they would go to the planning commission, and the planning commission would have a motion to extend the conditional use permit for X amount of time. But the planning commission wanted that so that they could check in on it in a few years.
Okay.
Councilman Jones.
Could we add a conditional, or could we add a
Special condition.
special condition that all the connexes be painted the same color.
By amendment.
Is that in the conditional use permit? No. So you can add special conditions
You can
to
add special
site plan.
conditions, yeah, you know, at the planning commission, we encourage the commission to talk to the applicant, you know, just to see what their thoughts are about it. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Did you move to add?
No, I
that?
asked a question.
Yeah,
Oh, you were
can.
just asking.
Sorry, the reason I'm chuckling is I was on a planning and zoning commission, and just be careful if someone gets upset with that, you might get Pepto-Bismol pink. And I have seen it. So
You might,
be careful what you ask
They're all the
for.
same color.
you're just going to say all the same color, polka dot.
Okay, I'm not hearing an amendment. Is there further discussion, council?
Well, I think I'd like to hear a little more discussion on that same color, because those vans come in multiple colors. And there is a way to word that, just kind of not coming to me as far as the color wise.
Okay, well, we need a motion to amend before we can discuss it.
What?
You just make them.
Okay, so you move an amendment that the containers be required to be the same color?
I'll second that.
I didn't hear the motion.
Tom, is that what you were amending? Move to amend that they be the same color? Okay.
Okay, have a motion, a second to amend to require the containers to be the same color.
I guess what I was looking for is earth tones. You see that a lot in subdivisions and HOAs, that the houses have to be colored. In fact, I think the old True subdivision has those in there, that they have to be kind of an earth tone color. So, you know, some of those vans are yellow and orange and rusty, so just kind of throwing that out to the group to see if they support that or not.
Okay, Councilman Jones?
Yeah, my subdivision has the same covenants. My outbuilding had to be painted the same color as the main building. And then when I did add one of these removable vans behind my warehouse, I had to paint it the same color as the main building and the warehouse as well. So it's been done elsewhere, and I think it makes the properties look better. It's really not that hard to do either.
No, I think
Okay.
Dave would totally.
The same
be
color
willing
as
to do
what? Same color as each other?
Yeah, I'm hearing,
Earth tone.
that. So they
Oh,
match.
or an earth tone?
so
That's a big difference.
is that your intention in your amendment, Councilman Baylor, that they be earth tones?
Correct. And that gives some variation.
Okay, yeah, so they can be different colors, they just need to be compatible, like earth tone colors. And it sounds like there's a precedent for that. And that's okay with the second?
I guess I'm not much of a fashion guy. I'm trying to figure out what the heck earth
What's
tones
an
are.
earth tone?
Browns.
They're brown,
Browns,
yeah,
grays.
browns, grays.
I was hopeful for maybe the same colors,
That's
so it
kinda what I
would
was-
look nice. You know, they're containers.
Uniform.
Okay,
Just wanted as
And I don't know if
aesthetically
Dave's gonna-
pleasing as a container lot
Too,
could be.
but in the earth tones, so that gives us a little bit of variation.
Oh, so
Okay.
Dave,
As far as the
so the
choice.
same colors in an earth
At
tone.
a paint store, he can get this.
And is that what I'm hearing from the amendment in a second?
yeah, I'll agree with that.
Containers are same colors in an earth
One
tone.
earth tone color.
Okay. Is there further discussion, council?
I just don't want it to look like AML's yard.
Understandable.
That's my intention.
That is a business district, so.
Good intent.
Further discussion, council? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so an additional requirement, so it's amended to include the additional condition that the containers be the same color of an earth tone, in an earth tone. Further discussion on the main motion for the site plan review. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, main motion carries.
Been down there there now.
Okay, so we're down to the pending agenda, and please remind me, Susan, we were talking about the a year evaluation we were going to put on there for February.
Right, I think we said February.
February.
Okay. Are there other pending agenda, calendar, elected and appointed officials, lists, items, council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Allison.
as it came up this evening, I'd like to add to a future agenda, next one if it works, a review of our local preference or the addition we give to the for local preference in our contract.
Okay, it's in the code, Councilman Allison. Would you just like that added to the agenda as like an informational item?
Well, yeah, I would like to change it from 5% to something that's meaningful, because every dollar spent in Cordova to a Cordova business is much greater than 5%. So,
Okay.
I'd like to change that to 15 or 20% local preference.
Okay, so it would be an agenda item for council to consider directing staff to amend the local preference provision in the code.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Is there, yes?
Yeah, I think we should
I'm
look
seeing
at it.
concurrence.
And so
Percentage.
bring it with 15% in
And then we
as the number, and then you can discuss.
Yeah, and you
I
can
think we
discuss and amend
yeah.
it.
I'm just not sure what's legal.
Okay.
I want to deter.
Well, that too. Let's see if it's legal and look at the
Boy,
percentages.
I think
Yeah.
10% is the most you can go.
Is that
I'm
right?
not sure.
Maybe, there may be some rails on it. Other items for pending agenda.
I guess I was going to say that the fifth candidate backed out, right? So I didn't
Yes.
know if council wanted to consider any of the others or wait to see what happens after tomorrow. I guess at tomorrow's, we can decide that.
When you say others, have any new complete applications come in?
No new ones have
Okay,
come in.
okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to relook at any of the ones that got
Yeah,
any.
so council, you had moved the council had moved the five recommended finalists that the city manager assessment committee forwarded. One of those candidates has since dropped out. So would you like to add a fifth, like the next highest applicant, for example, to the telephone interviews, or proceed with the two that are scheduled tomorrow? And then I guess the next pending agenda item after that would be selecting those for in-person interviews.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman, wow. I had, this is my line of sight. Jones, then Meyer, then Gleason, then Schaefer. So Councilman Jones.
Or Ann.
I apologize for missing the interviews today, but I do think that if one dropped out, it would be beneficial to replace that applicant with the next highest scoring applicant out of the pool of 17 that we got.
19.
19, yeah.
I'm the opposite. I think that we should discuss it tomorrow after we see the other two. I've looked at all the other interviews, and I think that we can make a decision tomorrow whether we bump somebody else up and do another interview, but we can discuss that tomorrow.
Gleason?
I would say the same thing as Melina. I think we've got those four are, that's all we need.
And there was a gap. I just having seen there was kind of a gap between the next tier down. Councilman Schaefer.
I was of the same opinion as Councilman Meyer and
Yeah.
also Gleason, that we just wait till tomorrow and see how we feel.
And you were the three that were there in person, so I would kind of say.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I'm in that boat too. If we can't get one or more people for a in-person interview after tomorrow, then we can go back to the well. But I think we're already in the well. So.
Okay, and just for Councilman Jones' benefit, and maybe Baylor, because you called into most of it, Tom, but Councilman concurred on definitely doing an in-person interview with one of the applicants today, and a maybe on the other pending the telephone interviews tomorrow. So, is that okay, Councilman Jones? Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I guess I agree with the majority of the group, but I would throw out, would it be okay if we sent out an email to our selection committee and just kind of ask them that question. There may be a possibility if a candidate dropped out, would there be somebody else that you would recommend for that fifth spot? They put a lot of work into that. I'm not saying that we should do it. I'm just saying maybe have that in our back pocket.
You could, an alternative would be that they did rank all those and you kind of have like a next highest on the list built in already.
That's
But,
true. That's true. So I'll stick with the group and we'll see what we got tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Any other pending agenda items? Councilman Schaefer.
I just have a question about item number 11, if there's been any movement on that First Alaskans offer to provide tribal government training.
Councilman Schaefer, there has not, and I will say that's on me. The clerk sent me the information there, and Vice Mayor Myers reminded me. I have been quite busy with a couple other priorities, but I will get that out the door.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the reminder.
I was going to say, tomorrow, I guess, we'll decide on timing for these in-person ones, because Councilmember Baylor, when are you back again? Not for a little bit? 19th? Tom, when are you back in town again?
I'm sorry. I answered you 3 times. Now I got to refuse.
What did he say? 19? What was the date?
15.
Oh, 1/5. Okay.
When's our next regular meeting?
18th.
Okay.
But I just was hoping to do it as soon as possible if we can get people in. I was just thinking about when to have those in person.
Yeah, exactly.
But Tom, you'll be on the phone tomorrow, so if we talk about dates, you'll be there.
Correct.
Okay.
You guys want to move forward? That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay.
We can. Is that okay with council that maybe after tomorrow we schedule those in-person interviews?
Yes.
And is that the feeling that we'd like to do that sooner rather than later?
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of what I said to the applicants, so I just wanted to make sure I'm reflecting council's will there. Any other pending agenda items? Okay, audience participation. We have staff. Thank you. Council comments. Councilman Jones?
No comment.
Meyer?
No comment.
Gleason?
Thank you, Sam, for all your hard work.
Schaefer?
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you to Sam for your hard work with water and water issues and also on the CTP grant. And also thank you to the water crew. You did a good job.
Allison?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Tom for staying up till all hours of the morning back there, and thanks to the council and the mayor for the time you put in volunteering too, especially the mayor. The last couple of months with the ferry thing has been a lot of work, and appreciate the effort you put in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, thank everybody, especially the water department, and please pass on our thanks from all of council. I think Sam, and I think all my fellow councilmen. It's a big job, going to all these meetings and during the day and stuff, but appreciate all the hard work everybody's putting in too. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that your lobbyist, John Bitney, has been putting in some heavy lifting for the city as well on a couple fronts, so. All right, we have, with no executive session, we have one remaining item.
Second.
We have 7 motions to adjourn in 8 seconds. All those in favor?